as being scheduled for July 30th. 13 and 15, so I did it wrong. So 40th we're hearing. 40th Avenue, 118 40th is, it's 13 and 15? How did I screw that up? So 13. Hold on, 13. Oh, 13 is rescheduled. Okay, 14. Yeah, 14 is going forward, so I may not have read that anyway.
Hello, do I have a Nick Cachacaro on the line? Hi, Nick. I believe you just muted yourself. There we go. Nick, hello?
There you go. Yep.
Okay, you're present. Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that that you can hear us and that we can hear you.
Okay.
We're going to get started? Okay, so I have to read the... Good afternoon. During the declared emergency in the City of Toronto, Committee of Adjustment virtual public hearings continue to be conducted publicly and are being conducted by electronic means through WebEx, an online digital platform, and streamed on the City of Toronto's Planning YouTube channel. These measures are necessary to comply with physical distancing requirements and a provincial order that limits attendance at public gatherings. So this will be a virtual public hearing, and participants who have registered in advance will be able to make their presentations to the committee using WebEx, an online event that is being moderated by city staff. Anyone wishing to view the hearing may do so by watching on YouTube. Participants who have registered in advance will be connecting either by their computer, a phone or tablet app, or by telephone. All participants will automatically be muted on entry, and when your item is called, each participant will be unmuted by the moderator, one person at a time. Only the Committee of Adjustment members will be participating by video. Any registered participants will be participating by audio only. We ask that you also mute your devices until you are called on to speak. Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we're meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. In accordance with Sections 45 and 53 of the Planning Act of 1990 as amended, this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Toronto is now called to order. The Committee of Adjustment considers applications for variances from the provisions of the zoning bylaw that apply to the property, permissions to extend or alter lawful non-conforming uses, and consents to sever properties to create new lots. Anyone who wishes to receive a copy of the decision of the committee on an application must submit a written request for a decision by email. Please ensure that you include your name, address, and email address, because the Committee of Adjustment and TLAB, in the event of an appeal, will be sending notifications and appeal updates by email. If you don't agree with the decision of the committee, decisions may be appealed to the Toronto Local Appeal Body, or TLAB, or in some limited circumstances to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal, or LPAT. Appeal instructions are set out at the bottom of the decision of the committee. The hearing procedure is as follows. We'll call each item in the order listed on the agenda. And so starting at item number 13 and going through the afternoon's agenda. In making your submissions, when an application is uncontested, the agent or applicant will proceed with their presentation if required. The committee may ask questions and or take the matter into committee for a decision. Each speaker, including the applicant or agent, will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee. Mr. Kamerick, who is watching the clock, will comment when you're reaching the 5 minutes. When addressing the committee, please start off by stating clearly your name and address for the record, and please remember to confine your remarks to the matters outlined on the applications. We deal with planning issues, not with building issues or with personal issues between neighbors. The applicant or agent, whether it's a contested application, where there's people here who've registered in opposition or with concerns, the applicant or agent proceeds first, makes a presentation to the committee. Please note that the committee may not entertain revisions to the proposals at the hearing today. The committee did decide to defer the application if it's substantially revised to ensure that the revised application is accurate and that all those entitled to notice of the application are informed of the changes. Then individuals either in support or usually opposed to the application will be invited to speak. Committee members may ask questions of each speaker after they finish their presentation. And when all other speakers are finished speaking, the applicant or agent is given an opportunity to rebut only those issues that were raised by the speakers and given a further 5 minutes unless there's a lot of neighbors in opposition, in which case I may use discretion to allow them to get through all those comments and speak longer. And that will mark the end of the session. The application is then taken into committee for a decision. And just to introduce the members on this afternoon, we have Donald Taylor on my left, Stan Kamerick on my right, Laura Alderson participating remotely, and my name is Michael Clark, and I'm your chair. Any declarations of interest on this afternoon's agenda items by staff or members? No? Okay. So that means we can start with the first application of the afternoon session, which is item number 13, 32 VASSAR. Okay, that was the one, okay, that one's scheduled to July 30th, as well as item 15, 18 Charleston Road is deferred, so there's no one here. That has also been rescheduled to the July 30th. So our first hearing of the afternoon is item number 14, which is 118 40th Street. This is one we have quite a number of people registered. We have with us, let me just introduce the application. We have the agent Alex Savanu with us. Alex, are you here?
I am, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And we have the neighbor at 107 40th Street, Valerie Walton. Valerie?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I did sound check everybody. They're all present.
Okay.
Yep.
So we don't have to go through that.
I only have the agent currently unmuted.
Okay. If they're muted, that's why they can't respond, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Agent
this is
Alex
an
Savanu,
application.
I'm present.
Okay, thank you. So this is for a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. There are 3 variances. Planning is recommending refusal of variance number 1. We have plans, context elevation. We have a covering letter. We have a revised planning rationale from Bosefields. We have revised Long Branch character guidelines and cultural heritage evaluation. We have photos of the existing property. And we have the planning memo I just indicated. We have comments from transportation, forestry, and heritage, and we have support and objections. So, Mr. Savagna, would you like to just give us a brief presentation of your application?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'm Alex Avenue, senior planner with Bellsfield, an agent for the application. Do you have a PDF of hearing visuals? There's a few visuals in there I'd like to go through if you have them, please.
I advised you yesterday that that material would not be available because it was submitted after the deadline.
Oh, okay, so I saw it on the AIC, but okay, understood. So I'll
We
just
have
get to
your planning rationale dated July the 8th, I believe.
Okay, sure. So just a bit of a background on the site, and I'll touch on a few of the variances as well. So as you know, the site is at the northwest corner of Branch and 40th, about 70 meters south of Lakeshore. It's zoned residential multiple, which permits a range of detached, semi-detached town, duplex, triplex, and fourplex dwellings. So the surrounding areas you may know is a pretty eclectic built form. The property is listed on the Heritage Register. You can see that we have submitted a heritage report confirming there is no heritage value of the property. Heritage preservation staff have agreed with that further to the memo that's part of your package as well. We submitted in February 2020, and our intent was to generally maintain the existing footprint and essentially add a story. And the 3 variances that you have identified, of course, were required. So we worked a lot with heritage staff to, of course, address the heritage piece, urban forestry staff to address hoarding existing city-owned trees, and planning staff. In terms of the planning staff, we did revise the proposal from 0.73 FSI to 0.69, and also increase the rear yard setback to reflect the location of the existing rear wall. I have read the planning report, of course, excuse me, and I understand that they do have issues with the FSI, so I did want to respond to that item specifically. So you'll note in the planning report under the zoning section, it does correctly note that this is an RM zone, but I think a nuance that isn't mentioned there is that it is subject to exception 2. And exception 2 provides a maximum FSI, as we know, for 0.35 for a detached home, but 0.6 for a semi all the way up to a fourplex. So, I mean, what that's telling me is that, you know, larger floor plates are expected and promoted within the area. And in my opinion, why we have this 0.35 lesser FSI requirement for a detached home is to prevent the proliferation of these, you know, mega homes that we're seeing, you know, being developed in the city. And in my opinion, this proposed home at 2,270 square feet is not a mega home, and it does meet the intent of the bylaw. And, you know, on that note, in my opinion, it's not an overdevelopment of the lot. There are no other variances related to the building envelope. There are no height variances or length or side or front yard setback or building coverage variances related to this envelope. So it really just comes down to FSI. I do recognize that there is a rear yard setback variance. In my opinion, that's a technical variance. The rear yard setback requirement is 7.5 meters. If you were to, and I have a visual to show this, but if you can imagine the rear wall being 7.5 meters away from the rear lot line, to comply with that requirement and the front yard setback requirement, you would have a building going from about 2.5 meters to 4.5 meters in width. So again, I think in my opinion, it is very technical variance in nature, which again comes back to really the only the only variance that we're dealing with here is FSI. And in the report, it does note that 0.69 would be the highest in the area. And I did have a visual to show, I came up with a study area of about 168 homes. And that ranges, of course, south of Lakeshore to about Garden Place over to 38th Street. And there were 21 variances within that area. 4 of those variances do exceed the 0.69 that are being proposed, and they go up all the way to 0.72. In fact, two of those variances, I believe at 6 and 8 Branch Avenue, which is two properties to the west of the subject site, were approved at the committee for 0.72. Just to the south of that, at I believe it's 14 and 16 Villa, were also approved for, I believe it was 0.71 for two of those homes. Those are the two closest C of A approvals to the subject site, and also happen to exceed what's being proposed at 0.69. As well, just on the east side of 40th, slightly south of the subject site at 95 and 97 40th Street, was recently approved for, I believe it was 0.68 FSI. There was also a planning report that, didn't express any issues for that FSI. And in my opinion, the built form that we are proposing does respond better to the Long Branch neighborhood design guidelines than these other recent approvals in the surrounding area. If you look at the elevations, or maybe you want to take a look at the context elevations, I mean, you can see the front door is at grade. It is, we were very conscious to kind of keep it grade related, and, not doing what you can see in other parts of the neighborhood where you have, the front door that's half a story above the garage, and you're kind of fitting 3 stories and making it, fit as 2. I think our proposal does respond very well to those guidelines. And
We're
the
getting close to
final
time.
piece
We're
that I'll
past
note-
time.
Okay.
Okay.
Mrs., you want to try to wrap up there?
Sure, yeah. I said the final piece that I'll note is that just one other thing in the planning staff report, it does say that there is a range in the area of 0.39 to 0.58, whereas
Yeah.
it's actually a range of 0.37 to 0.72. So just to wrap up, I do think the FSI is in keeping with the character of the area, and thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. So do you have any discussions? Because I'm a little surprised, like you're just outright saying to refuse variance number 1, which means you're at 0.35, which means you're, the whole application is gone. Usually they'll come back with some compromise given what they've stated about the range, and it, suggests something in the range, but they're just saying flat out refuse that floor space index and keep it at 0.35. So did you not have any discussions with them? That's basically saying you can't do anything, or you can, you might
No,
as well,
but
you're just
I-
within the bylaw. They're not suggesting anything
Yeah,
in
no.
between the 6.9 and the 3.5.
I had multiple conversations with the planning department over the past 2 or 3 months, multiple conversations, and they did say that they, I won't quote them, but they would support something within the range of 0.65. So we did go from 0.73 to 0.69, and and when I read the report, I just didn't see any real analysis. And in speaking with the planner, to say why 0.65 was appropriate, there was no kind of, in my opinion, like a planning reasoning for it other than it just being a number. And I found it kind of peculiar in the report that it missed some of these variances that are clearly over 0.69, albeit 2 doors away, one across the street and one down the street. So, I mean, it would have helped, I suppose, to have a bit more of like maybe a map that showed that, but we had conversations, and we went closer to what they wanted to see, and I understood they wanted us to go lower, but in my opinion, this
Yeah, I'm just a little surprised that after going through an analysis and saying that they're in the larger context, FSI variances have been granted from 0.39 to 0.58, and then they say that the requested FSI is not in keeping, and then they just say refuse it, as opposed to coming down with another number. So anyway, let's move on. Thank you for those submissions. Anyone have any questions for the agent before we move on to the neighbors? No? Okay, let's hear from the, you'll have a chance to respond. So we have with us the neighbor at 107 40th, as we have 2 representatives from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, I assume, and a director. So I assume we're only going to have one party speaking from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association?
Mr. Chairman, all 3 are going to be speaking because they're going to have different points.
Okay, anyway, so let's hear, maybe should we hear first from the neighbor at Valerie Walton? Valerie Walton?
It's
Valerie Walton at 107 40th Street.
Welcome.
I've lived here since 1992. This home at 118 40th Street is unoccupied. It's in current disrepair. It's an old, small house with an
Yep.
overgrown yard. It is an eyesore.
Okay,
It should
so
be torn down.
right, so that's what they're purporting to do. They're going to build a new house,
Yes,
and we need to know what
yes.
your concerns are with the proposed new house that they're proposing to build.
I have no concerns.
Oh, okay.
And basically, I would like to know, or this to be considered by other individuals in the Longbrad neighborhood. Have they driven by this house in the last 4 weeks? And would you want to live across or near this house in its current state? That's all my comments. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Okay, so now we have the Long Branch organization. If we can please have, if they're going to have 3 speakers, if you can perhaps each limit your comments to 3 minutes rather than 5. Who's speaking going first?
We can go with Christine Mercado first, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Ms. Mercado.
Yes, I've actually timed my minutes to time myself to 4 minutes.
Okay,
But if you can pull up our visuals, we're going to actually be sharing the visuals.
okay. You have the visuals there of your,
Ms. Mercado, can you just, would that be in your letter of objection?
Yes, I believe it would have been put in the behind.
yeah, we have your letter here.
Okay.
This is your letter dated, I don't see a date, July 15th.
Right, and there were actual pictures of the neighborhood as well as.
Yeah, there's some
FSI
charts and pictures, yes.
Yes. Okay. So Ms. Gibson and Mr. Jameson will probably speak more to those. I am actually requesting on behalf of the LBNA to request refusal of this application as it doesn't fit the 4 tests of the Planning Act. The requested FSI is not minor. It doesn't reflect the intent and purpose of the bylaw. It's contrary to the OP, specifically Chapter 3. And in the middle of a housing crisis, it's not desirable development for an RM zone. The property is in an RM zone and permits single-family dwellings, semis, and duplexes, triplexes, and
Can you try talking a little clearer? You're trailing off there. Christine,
For
try
sure.
speaking a little clearer.
Yeah, for
Yeah, thank
no
you.
worries, no worries.
That's
If the
better.
lot is big, okay, so if the lot is big enough, in considering the area and frontage, the zoning only permits a single-family dwelling at 0.35. So the FSI and rear yard setback variances are not minor. The FSI is double, and the rear yard setback is half of what it should be. The proposal does not fulfill the intent and purpose of the FSI bylaw. In RM zones, houses should address an affordability and diversity of housing through density or size. As an example, my first 2 houses were in RM zones. The first one was a 1-bedroom house in Mimico, which still exists, right next to the gardener. I got married and my husband and I moved into a 2-bedroom in Mimico that was nestled between 2 walk-up apartments with a shared drive and a renter in the basement to help with the mortgage. Our growing family now lives in a single-family dwelling in Long Branch in an RD zone. So this is an example of how the evolution of home ownership through size and zoning works. And this proposal short circuits that model by removing a smaller, less expensive home that's suitable for a starter or a downsize and replacing it with a huge and ultimately more expensive home that is more appropriate for an RD zone in Long Branch. This application is contrary to the official plan, specifically policy 3.2.1. A full range of housing in terms of form, tenure, and affordability across the city and within neighborhoods will be provided and maintained to meet the current and future needs of residents. And as this large FSI that doesn't even have a secondary unit, I don't see it as a starter home or a downsize home. The second units, policy 10 states, second units will be encouraged in order to increase the supply and availability of rental housing across the city and within neighborhoods. Second units may be provided within a primary dwelling in a detached or semi-detached house or townhouse, with the caveat that it will respect and reinforce the existing physical character of the neighborhood. So I recently deputed at the Planning and Housing Committee as the LBNA representative and a participant in the Missing Middle Housing Study of the Yellow Belt. This was a study aimed at exploring loosening up permissions in all neighborhoods to allow more dense housing. And generally speaking, the thought is to allow missing middle housing like triplexes, duplexes, and walk-ups everywhere in Toronto despite zoning. So this is supposed to address the affordability issue in Toronto. And Long Branch is already accomplishing missing middle housing through site area specific plans and RM zones. But in looking at this application, I can only see how this proposal does the exact opposite. It is proposing a large, expensive home that will not address any aspects of the housing crisis that we read about. So the LBNA has participated fully in the missing middle housing study with the Urban Land Institute, and we showcase Long Branch as a neighborhood that addresses missing middle housing. It has all the housing options that address missing middle, from single family dwelling to high rise. It has a 50-50 split between rental and home ownership according to the census. And it also has a growth plan with the highest number of living units added in all of Toronto at 2,200 using site area specific plans. The official plan has quite simply worked for us. So our concern with this application is that it follows the builder's trend of only making housing at the high end of the market, which is the smallest portion of people looking for houses. If this application is approved, it will be an example of Long Branch not protecting its RM zones. The intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw has a proven track record of allowing people to upgrade their living situation over time. This oversized house is not appropriate for its zoning and for its size, and does not even have a secondary unit. I welcome your questions because this is a very short period of time to explain the study. But the LBNA strongly feels that this application fails the four tests, despite the want for a new home to replace the tired one that is
5
there.
minutes.
Right? The official plan vision is clear, precision of the permissions of this property are clear, and the zoning is defined. So we respectfully ask that you support city planning's position and deny this application.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mercado. We let you go over 5 minutes, so perhaps the other two speakers can respond accordingly. The next speaker, I guess, Judy Gibson, who's the vice chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. And I assume you're going to be bringing up different points than Christine. Judy Gibson?
I had Miss Gibson as a call-in user. I have unmuted her. I did sound check her earlier, but I don't know what's going on now.
How about Mr. Jameson?
Mr. Jameson is present, so maybe we can go to him.
Okay.
Mr. Jameson, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Okay. My name is Ron Jameson. I'm a director of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. I live at number 1038th Street, so I'm 2 blocks over from the subject property, and I walk by it quite frequently with my dog. So I agree with Ms. Walton about a house in need of replacement. However, we have some concerns about the scale of the house, the FSI in particular.
Yes.
And I'm looking at 4.1.5 of the official plan. We're asked to look at the immediate context of homes adjacent to the or nearby the property in question, and to look as well at the prevailing density, in this case, on the street. And the prevailing density for homes on 40th Street is somewhere between 0.2 and 0.29. That represents roughly a third of the homes on 40th Street. In fact, 3/4 of the homes on 40th Street are within the bylaw standard of 0.35. What the applicant is asking for is double what the bylaw permits, and I think quantitatively that this goes beyond what would be considered minor. In fact, I've got a concern that this house would be the second largest on the entire street and would be the largest on the block that it is situated on. The largest being number 31, further down the street. I also took a look at Branch Avenue, which is the cross street.
Sorry, what? We're having trouble. What was that other street you just said?
I also looked at Branch Avenue as well, the cross street, and a similar kind of pattern exists. The average FSI on that block is within 0.35 standard in the bylaw. And the prevailing density on that as well is well below the bylaw standard. In fact, on Branch Avenue, as with 40th, prevailing density is between 0.2 and 0.29. So this application is not consistent with what we're asked to look at in section 4.1.5 of the official plan. And for that reason, I think it should be reviewed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jameson. We were able to, it was a little hard to hear you, but I think we got the gist of you said, and as you stated, the FSI is the real issue with this, as your chair mentioned in her presentation. Judy Gibson, Vice Chair.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. I was on the WebEx.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm the vice chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, and I'm also the chair of the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Committee. And the reason I'm speaking to this application is Long Branch has been hit and is losing the most tree canopy in any of the neighborhoods in Etobicoke. We've gone from a 26.5% tree canopy down to a 15% tree canopy, according to the city's latest data that they just released in January. So we've been hit worse than others. And in March 2018, March 26, 2018, City Council put forth some requirements for applications when they're coming to the Committee of Adjustment, and when there's bylaw protected trees. And this property has 3 bylaw protected trees that are be impacted by this application. And the applicant has not provided the information to the Committee of Adjustment. They've not provided a completed tree declaration form, up-to-date colored photos, a site plan outlining the as-of-right footprint. They've not provided tree details, the diameter of breast height, tree species and location, or the trees and tree protection zones in their plans. In their checklist for the guidelines, they indicated that they'll be planting more trees, and I don't know where those trees would be going or which trees they're planning on removing. So this application is incomplete. And I'd like to refer to what Ms. Walton said about driving by the property. I've been by the property, and I agree with her. The property is not being maintained. And so my question is, if they're not maintaining the trees and the property as it is, what assurance do the residents have that they're going to maintain any newly planted trees? So they haven't fulfilled the requirements, and we don't have confidence that the trees will be protected that are there. So that's why I'm asking for it to be refused. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gibson, I have a question because I'm looking at the the urban forestry, it's from the supervisor of tree protection and plan review, who was recommending a condition of urban forestry 1, which is a permit to injure a tree. But the 2 trees they show is a Kentucky coffee tree, 3 centimeters, and another one that's 2 centimeters. So are these are very young, saplings. These are not trees. Are there other trees we're talking about? Or are we talking about a 2 centimeter and a 3?
If you look at their plan, if you want to pull up their plan, beside the driveway, there's a 90 centimeter diameter at breast height maple tree.
Because urban forestry, I'm looking at their memo.
How that's going to be protected during this.
Okay. Well, urban forestry is looking for a condition to protect the trees, but the 2 trees that they identify in their memo are like, little seedlings.
And when the urban forestry went and looked at those trees, they were probably in better shape than they are now, because the applicant has not been maintaining the trees on the property.
Yeah, well, last 4 weeks it more or less hasn't rained much. So, but I'm just trying to see where this 90 centimeter tree is referred to in there. I assume that's the tree they're going to damage, and not the 2 centimeter tree, because the 2 centimeter tree is not covered under the bylaw. And anyway, thank you for that. So,
excuse me, the 2 centimeter tree is covered, I believe, because it falls within the city allowance. Is
right.
the way I'm interpreting that.
But that can easily be replanted because it's not a mature tree. It's too. Anyway, we've heard from the three members of the Long Branch Association. Does anyone have any questions for them before we move back to the applicant or agent to respond to their concerns, which is basically oh yeah, I have just a question for any of the three of you. So do you've read the planning report that they just basically said refuse the FSI, which means to refuse the whole application, but they don't mention any number at which they would be prepared to accept this after they go through and they say there's variances from 0.39 to 0.5 something. Do you assume that you agree that there's some number that would be worthy of support, given that Ms. Walton said, the current home is in disrepair, not being maintained, and it's an eyesore?
I think that it's Christine Hannon, Christine Mercado here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so as far as the lot itself is roughly a 50 by 50 lot. It's actually a little bit longer than that. So it isn't a particularly deep lot. So a house can be built there at 0.35 because a house exists there at 0.35. If you start to build up, yes, you will end up adding to the FSI.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't the number that they came up with. And what
Yes,
they're talking
okay.
about is they're talking about a very large home,
Right.
on a not so large lot.
Yeah, and I guess you're right. Your presentation was based on the fact that, okay, you could support a larger property if it was, accommodating two or, whatever the built form, but for single family, you're saying that's way too big for a single family, and it's missing that mark of the market that no one seems to address, the middle as opposed to the higher end. So
Yeah,
I did
correct.
appreciate those comments.
Right,
Okay, so
it's
let's
very
go back to
repetitive.
Sorry?
Yeah. Sorry, it's a repetition of what we see is that no one is addressing affordability, especially in the RM zones. It's the same houses
Right.
that they're building over and over again.
Correct.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, Christine. I fully support the objective of the missing middle. It is largely disappearing from the city of Toronto, and we want
Laura, sorry, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So my question is, the remedy for this property. I think the chair touched on this a little bit, but what would you like to see there? Would you like to see a multiplex home? What do you envision there? Based on the fact that it is in disrepair, what do you envision there? What would you like to see?
Well, for what it's zoned for. So right now, what it's zoned for is a single family dwelling. So that's what the lot area and frontage will allow. So, but it would be a smaller home. So it could be similar to the homes that I started out with. My first home was 500 square feet.
Yeah,
okay, but a smaller home that could be a starter home or a downsize.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so I just wanted to hear what your position was on that. Thank you, Laura, for that question. Any further questions, or let's go back to the agent to have him respond to those issues that have been raised. Mr. Savagnou?
Actually, I've got one question for the objectors. I mean, if you look at what's permitted as of right is essentially a 1,100 square foot house, which is not I don't see the economics of building an 1,100 square foot house. So what size would be acceptable?
If you look at the plan that's before us, and that's the only thing that we can sort of look at, is that you're looking at 4 bedrooms upstairs, and then you've got an empty basement, and we do see a pattern of this.
Yeah, but I'm not asking you to address, this is a different kind of question.
Okay,
if the main issue, if your main concern is the FSI, what level of FSI would not be of concern?
What level of FSI would not be a concern? If you're asking me to pick a number, it would end up being more of a 0.42. And I'm picking that number out of the air. You have to see how the deployment of space goes on that particular property.
Of course, but I just wanted to get a feel, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
let's go back
we
to
aren't
Alex
against
then.
building houses.
Okay, Alex?
One moment, Chair. Let me just put the objectors on mute, and then I will unmute the agent. Okay, Mr. Savanu.
Okay, great. Everyone can hear me. This is Alex Avenue, agent speaking.
Yep.
I appreciate the concerns of the community, and perhaps I'll just go through a few items. In response to Ms. Gibson, she noted, we did work with urban forestry staff. The original report did identify those two centimeters in diameter trees and that they do need to be protected. So she is correct. We did that. We provided the hoarding up to the city standards, ran it by urban forestry. They did not identify any issues with the hoarding. So from a tree preservation perspective, there will be no issues. There will be no other trees removed as a result of this development. And I believe that staff or urban forestry staff have asked that we add that condition number 1 to the application, which we have no issues with. So from a tree preservation perspective, I don't think there's an issue here. Moving on, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of, talk about the FSI and strictly the number. And in my opinion, when we're looking at the credibility of an application, I'm not just looking at the one number for FSI. It's how that FSI, is going to impact the neighbors and, what is the quantum of variances. So again, if I can speak to the rear yard setback, in order to redevelop this property in any sense, you're going to have a rear yard setback variance. You cannot build anything on this property. You can't even exceed what's existing there now by complying with the 7.5 rear yard setback and a 3.62, which is the front yard setback requirement. You will have a home between 2.5 meters and 4 meters in width. It's simply not feasible, and that's why I say that's a technical variance, because there's no way, feasibly speaking, that you can get around that. And again, what we did is we even increased the rear yard setback from our first iteration to reflect the exact location of the rear building wall, which planning staff requested and have no issues with now. So if all we're dealing with is really the 0.69 FSI, again, like, you're going to have an FSI variance no matter what you do with this property. And at 0.69, if it wasn't overdevelopment, if this was a big monster home that is out of keeping with the area, we would see other variances. We are within the height limit. We are within the setbacks, other than the rear, the front yard, the building coverage, the length, the depth, everything about this building envelope, which how we perceive neighborhood character based on the envelope. The envelope is 100% within what the city is requiring. It's just, I recognize that the lot is smaller and it is bringing the FSI up, but the actual square footage, this isn't a monster home. It's really not. And in terms of the, the piece about the OP policies, I'll speak to, Mr. Jameson did mention, the immediate context. Well, the immediate context is, of course, along 40th Street and Branch Avenue, where I've already identified there are four recent Committee of Adjustment approvals that exceed the 0.69. And there are 2 just down the street, again, that were at 0.68 all approved. So I don't agree that it's not in keeping with the surrounding area. And lastly, I guess I'll speak to this, the OP policy about tenure and the size of the building. I mean, again, the lot, it is on the smaller side. So in order to build something that can accommodate multiple units, like a semi-detached or a triplex or duplex or fourplex, that simply isn't possible because the lot area isn't large enough to accommodate that. And I mean, I agree that, there is an affordability crisis, but, for this application and on this site, that's simply not an option. It would be great if it was double the site. Let's build a few townhouses or something that had multi-units, but the site is small. You can only fit a detached home. that's all that we're, that's all that we can propose is what can feasibly done on the property. And, other than that, I guess I have no other responses. Again, I just want to reiterate the
Okay,
FSI, the fact there's no other variances, and how I believe it's in keeping with the area.
yeah, I take it that you said there's no other variances. It's not like you have height and and obviously the rear,
Yeah.
it's a small, short lot. So you're gonna have to have, so when you received this memo from community planning, I think it was July the 13th, did you call them and say like, you want to, you're basically refusing the whole application in any event, but you didn't ask like, what would you support? Like it's just zero.
It was, yeah, I did, and it was 0.65. And that's not, I thought it would be referenced in there.
Yeah.
It's not, but I mean, the conversation was, can you bring it down to 0.65? We brought it down to 0.69, and my response was like, why 0.65? Well, how is 0.65 going to improve this house other than it just being a number that you think it should be, right? Is there a certain portion of the property that we should change in order to lessen the impact of this built form on the community? And there was no rationale for that. So I don't see why reducing it more just to meet some, number that I'm not going to say is arbitrary, but is not backed by evidence or planning rationale for why we would do that. And I thought that the 0.69, again, we did reduce it. We revised the plans. We worked with Heritage for months to deal with this heritage issue. We worked with urban forestry to ensure we're not losing any trees. We worked with planning. We revised the proposal in accordance with what they wanted. We just have a difference of 0.4 FSI. And by the looks of it, even if it was at 0.65, I don't think we would have the LBNA's support unless we essentially not, I don't know what the option is to redevelop this in something. Again, I understand it was off the cuff, but 0.42, that's simply not feasible.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Question for you. We have as objectors, so Valerie Walton is not an objection, which the Long Branch Neighborhood Association. Did you speak to the adjacent neighbors? And I realized like the neighbor at...
Yeah, Ms. Walton did call me in, and as she said, she is supportive of
Okay,
this,
I'm just
and
not
it's
talking about Mrs. Walton. I'm talking about people on Branch or people on 14th, the adjacent homes.
Yes, from my understanding, yes, the builder did speak with the gentleman that lives directly to the west. So that would be who we back onto. I think it's...
Okay, in any event, what I'm just pointing, we don't have any letters of objection from the residents, the immediate
None
residents.
of the neighbors, yeah.
Okay.
None of the neighbors have anything to say other than Miss Walton, who is supportive.
Okay.
So,
Okay, thank you, sir. So let's see if committee members have any follow-up questions for you or for the Long Branch Neighborhood Association representatives, or if they're ready for a motion.
One question. The doorway, it's not an elevated doorway. It is at grade. Is that correct?
it is completely at grade. We did that on purpose in order to comply with the Long Branch guidelines, correct?
Okay, all right.
Okay, any other questions or?
And also one more thing. I was under the impression that planning had asked for this to be deferred so that they could have a discussion regarding the Long Branch guidelines as opposed to refused.
That's number
Well, that I believe was a previous, there was two planning reports. One was submitted before we made those changes, as I said, by reducing the FSI and increasing the rear yard setback. And then they reissued an updated planning report, which, as the chairman said, was to refuse the FSI variance. So we, again, I worked with the planner on the file, multiple calls with him over the past 3-4 months, from heritage to trees to the FSI to the rear yard setback. It's been nonstop for this.
And were you aware that that was the recommendation, that it be refused?
I was, because he did tell me that 0.65 was something more palatable to them. And I think I, provided a response to that, being, I, in my opinion, I didn't find that there was a strong rationale behind it. In my opinion, it was just a number And even if we went down to that, I think that, it wouldn't improve any of the relationship of the building to its neighbors. So I don't see a strong planning argument behind it, other than it's just a number that perhaps not to set precedent. I
Yes.
don't know. I don't want to speak for planning, but that would make sense to me.
That's often the way it is, yes.
Yeah, which in my opinion isn't the way that we should be looking at applications. It's based on this specific basis, on this specific site, and not based on what someone may do down the road that maybe has a property in the middle of 40th Street. This is on the corner of a street. It's not breaking up the street fabric. It's reinforcing it. So that's my response.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to come back to the FSI, and there is an issue of precedent, because although you say, we should look at each one individually, yet you come to us and say, well, there's 2 that are like this, there's 3 that are like that, and that is planning's concern, because you're pushing that envelope. And so I'm surprised that you didn't agree to the 0.65.
Anyway,
Sorry,
that's what he's
I'll
telling. We
let you
haven't heard
finish.
anything from planning or anyone about 0.65, so.
Sure.
But I guess my
I-
question is, are you
they
willing
came
to,
out with a refusal.
are you willing to do a small reduction on the FSI?
Well, at this
I
point,
mean,
you've
it's-
heard everything,
Okay.
so
Okay.
this is the
well,
application before you.
I'm not sure if you wanted me to respond to just the one piece about the precedent. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I have referenced other files with higher FSIs that are direct, adjacent to the property, but also, and I just want to go back to those other FSI approvals had other building envelope items related to it. They were pushing the envelope. We are 100% in the building envelope. FSI actually is not really related to envelope. Envelope is the setbacks, which one we can't get around, and the heights and the coverage, all of which we are within the permitted envelope. It happens to be a smaller site, so we have the FSI variance. So that would be my response to a precedent. Well, those other ones, they had other variances. I actually have them in front of me. I could go through them, but I know that we won't do that right now. But, that would be my response to, the precedent question.
Okay, thank you. So we're in committee now, so it's time for someone to make a motion based on what the submissions we've heard from the applicant and from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association.
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll say it appears that some negotiations were in play between the agent and the city. Originally, this application was for an FSI of 0.73, and it was reduced to 0.69. And it appears that for whatever reason, the agent decided to stop negotiating. So we have to deal with what we have. I'm inclined to be supportive of the planning staff recommendation on this application. If I can just find it for a second here.
Refusal of variance 1. Mr. Taylor, planning's recommendation was to refuse variance 1 for floor space.
Yeah. Anyway, I can't find the specific words, but they object to the FSI. They want that variance refused. I agree with them, and I would move that the application, that variance 1 be refused I'm prepared to recommend that variances 2 and 3 be approved, but I don't know how useful that's going to be to you. But just to keep everything aligned, that would be my motion.
To refuse
Refuse
variance one.
1, approve 2 and 3, subject to urban forestry
Variance one.
condition 1.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Do I have a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion? Mr. Kamarick? All in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed, so motion carries 3-1. Thank you, neighbors, and thank you, applicants. Item number 15 has also been rescheduled for July 30th, so we'll move over to item number 16, A, B, and C, 32 Roseland Drive. This is an application, I believe it was deferred from December the 5th, perhaps. It's for consent to severance and related variances for 2 detached dwellings proposed to be built on the site following the severance. And we have 8 variances on each of those. We have a planning report, and then a consideration that the planning report stands as there were no changes made after the deferral. So the planning position is to refuse. We have urban forestry conditions 3 and 5, which is also refused. Is planning asking for a deferral on this one or for refusal?
Refusal.
Refusal.
Yeah, refusal.
March 19th, 2020.
I think this is the one where the planning report said they felt that in the event of a severance, it would be more appropriate to build semis and detached homes here and based on side yards. So we have registered to speak here, I guess, neighbors at 28 and 36 Roseland, as well as the agent for the applicant, Armando Barbini. Mr. Barbini, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir. So perhaps you can give us a presentation here and advise in particular why you feel that detached dwellings are appropriate as opposed to semi-detached as planning is recommending here. I assume you've seen the planning memo.
Yes, I have seen the planning memo, yeah.
There's been 4 of them, so the latest one, I guess, is the one we're looking at. Okay.
So I did consider the planning recommendation. The owners
I
considered it.
can't hear you, Armando. You try to speak.
How's that? Better?
A little better. It's muffled, but it's better. You're not talking on a speakerphone, are you?
Well, I'm talking on the computer. No, not a speakerphone.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
My WebEx.
Okay, that's a little bit better.
Okay. Let me see. I'm raising the volume. I'm not sure if that makes a difference, but okay. Can you hear me now? Is it clear?
Clearer.
Clearer.
We'll let you know.
You have to stay really close to the computer, like not turn your head away and all that.
Okay. Let's try this then. So if you could put up the, I guess, as I was saying, we did consider modifying the proposal to pair of semi-detached dwellings. The owner felt strongly that he wanted to maintain the existing built form, especially given the fact that there are quite a number of other properties in this area with similar 25-foot lots with detached dwellings. We did reduce the proposal in order to address some of the concerns from the neighbor at the last hearing. So we reduced the length of dwelling, which is also in turn reduced the lot coverage and the floor space index. If the letter dated July 15th could be put up on the screen, I would like to take the committee through some of the exhibits there and maybe demonstrate why I've come to a conclusion that this proposal does meet the tests in the Planning Act.
That's your cover letter number 2 dated, let me just see here.
July 15th. Yeah.
Oh, I see September 27th.
No, there's a July 15th submission. It's called supplemental.
Oh, it's cover letter number 3.
Cover letter, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so if you go to the exhibits, which are the next pages down. So the first exhibit is the study area that I chose for the lot study, both the broader context and the immediate context.
Yep.
And if you scroll down to the next exhibit, there's a series of 3 charts.
Yep.
And on these charts, it tells one of the very strong telling factors here is that the most occurring lot is that of 7.62 meters or smaller.
Yeah, so between 7.62 or less, you have 59% of the lots.
Well, actually, there's 37% of the lots in the immediate context that are
Oh, I'm talking.
7.62 meters or less, yeah.
Right. Okay, I'm looking at the broader context and immediate context, but in both cases, it's in
Yeah, so-
57, 59 range.
Okay.
So that's what you're trying to tell us, that there's a lot of lots that are
There's a
small
lot of
lots. But the
25,
question
yeah.
is, we're not saying, I don't think planning wants to opposing your severance, but they're saying once you get these severed lots of 7.62, which is a privilege, not a right, they're suggesting that these lots are more appropriate for semis and not detached
Understood.
homes. That's the only
Understood.
issue here.
Okay, so if you scroll down to the next exhibit, which is exhibit number 3, it's a series of 14 photographs. You'll see the photograph numbers on the top.
Mm-hmm.
These are all formerly 50-foot lots that were severed into 25-foot lots with detached houses on them. The only ones that are different are photograph number 7, where they're about 8 and 8.36 meters. The rest of them are all 7.5 meter lots. And they're all detached dwellings. The other interesting factor is that you'll notice that on the outside of all of these homes, there's a varying different build form. Some of them are older detached houses, some of them are 2-story homes, some of them are bungalows. So this whole area has an intermixing of lot frontages as well as built forms. So you see, like, for example, number 14, you see photograph number 14. To the left of that is an older bungalow. And the other photographs, you'll see a varying different built form. So my submission is that the physical characteristics of this neighborhood are not homogeneous. They're very eclectic. Either it's common to find detached dwellings beside semi-detached dwellings, beside older homes, beside newer homes, and etc. The next chart, or the next exhibit, is a series of charts, and you'll note that on the left-hand side, there's a matching photograph number for each of the photographs in the preceding exhibit. So that these are the variances that were granted for all of those 25-foot lots, right? So I'd like to highlight that the floor space index, for example, the average floor space index that was approved in all of these decisions, and you can scroll down, there's more, is 68%. We're proposing 66.5% or 0.665. Lot coverage, the average was 38%, and we're proposing 36%. It's quite common to have side yard setbacks of 0.6 and 0.9 approved, and we're proposing 0.6 and 0.9. With respect to the dwelling height, the bylaw, this proposal complies with the harmonized bylaw with respect to dwelling height. It's under the old bylaw that there's a height to the midpoint of the roof. But it's been designed totally within the new bylaw requirements with respect to height. And the last variance with respect to length, the house to the east at 28 is actually longer than this house. And it doesn't really show it in this exhibit, so but you can look at the plans and you'll see that. And the house to the west is approximately in the same location. And if you go down to the last exhibit, I'd like to address the semi-detached versus detached again. So first, this shows one of those houses you saw in Exhibit 3 on Roseland Avenue, and you'll see this is the proposed elevations placed side by side, so you get an idea of how they look, right? What they were going to look like, and it's approximately to scale, and you'll see that they're very similar. But then the next photograph, the next page, what I've done is I've shown what a semi-detached house might look like on the same size lot. So if this planning department is saying that, well, 7.5 meter or 7.62 meter lots are fine, but we would prefer to see semis. Well, this is what you're going to look at. Something similar. This is not going to be the final design, but just taking this design and and basically just squeeze the house together so that now you don't have this 4-foot separation between the houses. And I would submit that the 4-foot separation actually softens the massing of this house from the street view, right? So as you're walking down the street, you're not looking at, just a massive house straight across, right? So I would submit that there are quite a number of 25-foot lots that contain detached dwellings in this area. Many of them have been built with similar variances being granted. And I submit that the proposal before the committee meets the test set out in the Planning Act. And if there are any questions, I'm here, of course.
So, Mr. Barbini, why, the last point of having the separation as opposed to not having the separation. So why is planning opposed to that? Is the side yards between them or the side yards on the other side? They're protecting the future owners who are going to have a minimal side yard between the two homes?
Potentially, the side yard could be slightly larger.
Yeah. So
in this example, I've shown a 4-foot side yard as opposed to a 3-foot side yard. That's one potential. What's this? I'm not. They've looked at majority of the homes that they've seen. A majority of the older homes are. Majority of the semis that are originally built were built on 25-foot lots. But a lot of the newer homes that are being built as detached houses on 25-foot lots.
Yeah. So, okay. So what you're doing is you're providing in between 0.61, whereas 1.2 is a half, but those are people in between. So they'll sort of, when they buy, they'll know what they're getting there. I don't know if 0.6 is, and on the other side, it's 0.91. Whereas 1.2, so it's closer to meeting the bylaw on the unrelated lots on either end.
That's right.
So, so that, if you agree with me, that's what planning seems to have. The only concern is the issue they feel semis are more appropriate. I'm listening to your argument here that looking at what's up on the screen, it actually giving some spatial separation, there's an argument that it reduces the massing.
Well, the house itself is bigger though.
Yeah. Okay, so let's hear then. Okay, let's hear then from I guess the neighbors who've registered to speak here. I guess the neighbor at 28 and the neighbor at 36. So Paul, if you can unmute.
I have Nick Cachacaro at 28 Roseland Drive unmuted.
Okay. Sir, can you let us know what your concerns are? I trust you've listened to the presentation from the agent.
Yes, well, I just had a few concerns about how close the dwelling was going to be to my house, but it was just for the east drop.
And you're right next door, correct?
No.
Or you're
Yes,
one house over? You're at
one
28.
house over on the east side, yeah.
So is there a 30 there now?
No, there is not a 30.
Okay, so you're right next door. Okay,
Yeah.
so your concern was how close they're coming to you, but I think that was the last thing I mentioned. I think it's 0.9, whereas 1.2 is required.
Yeah,
0.91.
my concern was more of the east drop than anything, because I said it was, when I read the paper, it said it was 6 inches or 150 compared to the 300. Is that correct? Or
It's 0.61 of a meter as opposed to 1.2 of a meter on in between the two houses they're proposing, and on the ends, which you're on the east side, I guess, is 0.91.
Yep. 0.91.
So it's
And
0.3.
then,
It's like 1 foot off what's required. He's 1 foot closer to you.
1 foot closer, and then it was just the protection, so when they excavate, that it won't all cave in.
Yeah, that we don't deal with construction issues, but if you have issues, you can deal with the building department and deal with the builder or whatever. We only deal with the build form here.
Okay.
So they're coming 1 foot closer to you, 0.3 of a meter, than they would be required to. If that was your concern.
That was my concern. And is it a flat roof, or is it?
We can have him respond. I know you can take a look at the elevator. Have you spoken to your neighbor, or have they approached you to speak, or?
No, they have not approached me.
Okay.
That's a lot of drive.
Okay. So are you opposed to the application? You're just trying to find out some information.
Just I'm not opposed to it. So right there, so it's a 0.29. The 0.9 is not really, it doesn't really bother me too
Right.
much. It's
Okay.
the 1 foot from the east trough to the property line, because then it'll, like, that's the thing that worries me the most. Like, if there's fires, obviously the east trough, the roof would catch my roof on fire. So that would be the only thing that would concern me.
Okay. So like I said, they're 1 foot closer than they're required to be by the bylaw.
Yeah, so that's fine.
Okay. Okay. So can we hear from the neighbor then at 36?
One moment, Mr. Chair, just give me,
Does anyone have?
I will unmute her in a moment. Okay, so caller, so I have just unmuted Maria Coomer.
Yes, hello?
Hello.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my issue is with the side yard, the 1.2 meter between the homes.
Yes.
I'm concerned with the privacy. I'm concerned with the reduced sun exposure and the obstruction of my view that I currently have. I have a patio as well as a sunroom on that side. And with the length and the closeness, all of that would be negatively impacted.
Okay. Are you right next door? So there is no
Right next door.
34, correct?
There is no 34.
I see. So your neighbor. We just heard from your neighbor on the one side. So as we looked at these variances, so they're coming a foot closer, 0.29 of a meter closer than they're required to be.
Yes.
By the bylaw.
And my issue is also pardon me, my issue is also with the eaves, the closer eaves to the property line. I'm concerned with falling snow, ice, water, any damage long-term to my property, my foundation, the interlocking on that side.
Okay. So they're coming 1 foot closer to you than they would otherwise be required. Does anyone have any questions for either the neighbors, committee members at 28 and 36, both adjacent neighbors who raised issues with the side yard? The smaller side yard, just to clarify with staff, the 0.61 is what's between the two proposed homes. And on the east and west side of the existing lot, impacting the neighbors at 28 and 36, they're coming a foot, 0.29 of a meter closer than they were required.
Mr. Chair, I believe believe Ms. Kumar also has an issue with variance 8 with the closeness of the eaves.
Yes, the eaves as well. Oh, it's on the west side.
Yeah.
There is no a corresponding one on the east side, correct? About the roof eaves. Oh, it must be on the other lot. Yeah, it must be the exact same issue on the other. I think the when I reviewed the application, I think the variances were sort of mirrored, so that she would. Right. The roof eaves are closer to the east side lot line on one of the applications. Yeah, and then on the other one, it's the mirror. Yeah. Okay. So those are the concerns. Any questions, or let's go back to Mr. Barbini for a response.
Yes. Okay, maybe I can address the eaves issue that both neighbors had first. Just like you said, Mr. Clark, the interior setbacks, the walls that face each other is 0.6 meters to the actual wall.
Mm-hmm.
The eaves trough itself will be 0.3 meters, or actually 0.14 meters, and that is where the variance occurs. So there is no variance to the eaves on the exterior sides adjacent to the two neighbors. So the eaves could go as close as they're designed. It's the wall itself that's 0.3 meters or 1 foot too close. So the eaves is not an issue with respect to the exterior sides. It's only the interior because we're asking for that.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. So the eaves are on the interiors. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 2 foot setback and they're 18-inch eaves and overhang, right? So it brings the eaves to about 6 inches from the lot line, but that's towards each other, not on the exterior.
Okay.
The other concern that the neighbor at 28 had was with respect to shoring. I did note on the website, he did send in an email, and there was some concern about there was no shoring plans proposed, and he's concerned that with some excavation, the sidewalk along the side, his pathway will fall down. Well, the owners assured me that he will obviously follow any shoring requirements that the building department has, and will take care of any falling. You're going to make sure that the neighbor's house doesn't fall down, obviously, right? And that is, like you said, a building department matter, and we will ensure that it's taken care of. The neighbor to the west, privacy, sun shadow. If the staff could put up, because I mean, in response to that, I addressed it in the January 24th letter that I submitted. It had some shadow study prepared, and I addressed it in that. So if that could come up on the screen, I'm not sure if it's appropriate this time, but it is specifically to the question that the neighbor raised and the concern they raised. These are the concerns that were raised to me at the December 5th meeting. So we addressed it specifically with some sun shadow diagrams. If you can't get it up, I'll just talk to them, right? So if you are able to either open that up on your screen, you'll see that Appendix 1 to that January 24th report. Yes, so that shows on the left-hand side is the original proposal, which this one here, we remember we cut the length by 0.6, right? So you'll see a very slight difference with respect to the setback requirements. So this takes place at 10 a.m. in the summer, and the drawing on the left-hand side is the original proposal, which is 0.9 meters from the lot line.
Yeah.
The one on the right shows a 0.3 meter increase or a 1.2 meter setback. So what happens is at 10 a.m., before 10 a.m., there will be shadows cast. After 10 a.m., because the sun goes from the east to the west, after 10 a.m., there will be no shadows cast on the neighbor's deck, which is in that rear location there. You see the lower part there. I can point to it, but you can't see me pointing to it. But so that's what that first one shows. It shows that even if we were to build 0.9 meters away, there's going to be a negligible difference. So if you scroll up to the previous page again, I'm sorry, Appendix 1. Okay, the larger, if you zoom in on these two larger ones in the bottom, they're basically zoomed in from the top. So you'll see on the left-hand side, this is what we're proposing. And it touches the wall at a certain point at about 10 a.m. The other one, you'll see it's almost touching the wall at 10 a.m. So this is the difference. So that so this one shows that with the increased setback of 0.3 meters to comply with the bylaw, there will not be a great difference between what's being proposed and what would happen if we were built it at 0.9 meters.
Okay.
Privacy, there's no windows being
very
proposed
helpful.
along that side. Yeah, I hope so. And there's no windows being proposed along that side. So that there will not be any privacy, which was mentioned, any privacy issues.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Barbino, thank you. Committee members, any follow-up questions for Mr. Barbini or for the neighbors? Or are we ready for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I think that the main issue with respect to this application is what's better, semis or singles. I was most impacted by the rendering that we saw a little while ago and satisfied myself that the massing concerns are mitigated, actually, by having single detached dwellings. When I look at the streetscape in this area, it's quite an eclectic street. There's duplexes, big houses, small houses. In this specific area, you've got a pair of semis on one side and a very large detached on the other. I don't really think that there's any form of new development that wouldn't be in keeping with this eclectic street. So my motion would be to recommend approval, subject to urban forestry condition number 3.
Okay, thank you. And the normal conditions on consents about
And the normal conditions on consent, yes.
numbering and all that.
Transportation conditions,
Yes, yeah. And there's a transportation.
which are normal for consent.
Right. Okay, thank you for that
So,
motion.
Yep.
We have a seconder for the motion. Laura Alderson, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, your application is unanimously approved, Mr. Barbini. Thank you for making those submissions.
you.
And have a great day. Thank you, and thank you,
Okay, you too.
neighbors.
Thank you.
Okay, our next application is item number 17, A, B, and C. Very similar to the application. It's consent and request to build a pair of detached houses. In this instance, though, the requirement for lots is instead of 12 meters, I believe it's 15. Otherwise, it's and we do have revised plans here. There has been reductions made to when this matter was, I believe this matter was deferred, or was it? Or it wasn't deferred. But we do have revised plans here. And we have registered to speak Franco Romano, the agent, and the neighbor at 260 Beta, Mike Palandiandi. So let's first hear from Mr. Romano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and forgive me, but please note that the minimum required lot frontage for.
Sorry. Can you speak? I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Go ahead. Now
Hello?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I was wrong here. It's 12 meters. The
It
requirement.
is 12 meters, yes,
Not
thank you, sir.
So you're 7.6 as opposed to 12, and just like Mr. Barbini before you, who incidentally you're right behind each other on the application. I see here we have a revised application because you have reduced the height of the flat roof dwelling and the height of the side exterior main walls. So we have revised plans, also revising the coverage from 45% to 39%. And
eliminating the driveway width variance.
sorry?
And the driveway width variance is also eliminated?
Okay, we don't have that shown. That's variance number 9? The
That
parking
is,
space width or the driveway width?
The driveway width.
Okay, we have driveway and parking space. You're saying the driveway width is being eliminated from, you can comply with 3.2 and not 3.4? So that's variance number 8.
Yes.
So variance number 8 on both are withdrawn. Okay. Okay, so why don't you give us a brief presentation here, and just like Mr. Barbini ahead of you, explain why I guess you feel that detached dwellings are preferable here to semis.
Well, that isn't a point that the planning department has made here, but I will speak to that. So through you, Mr. Chairman, staff, I'd like to go through my 5 slides.
Yeah, Mr. Romano, can you? I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you somehow get a little closer to the computer? Thank you.
Computer, I have not touched anything.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
A little better.
A little better?
Yeah, I'm just looking here, the staff report. Okay, you've seen the staff report. If you can touch upon that, they say the May
Do you
staff
have more than
report
one device on? Because it's very
stays.
garbled.
Can you hear me okay?
It's just very muffled and there's a lot of paperwork noise that we can hear.
Well, I was just adjusting the computer because this is the same position I was at a couple of hours ago and it went fine.
Yeah, much better, whatever you're doing.
Are we
That
good?
sounds better. Yep.
Okay, so I just brought up my screen. Thank you. So I'm going to go through Okay, the planning staff report is basically making a recommendation based on the lot size. They don't make any comments with regards to the building itself, the dwelling type, or the built form itself. What they are saying is that the lot size is, in their opinion, and it's not even just a lot size, it is lot frontage, is not in keeping with what they say. They say that the proposed lot frontage does not meet the majority of lot frontages, and therefore they're recommending refusal. This analysis is really not an analysis. It's a conclusion based on a term, majority, which does not find itself in any planning instrument. The official plan does not talk about majority. What the official plan speaks to is a proposed development is to respect and reinforce the existing physical character. If indeed the test was majority, then I would submit that pretty much every minor variance application that comes in front of the Committee of Adjustment could be argued to not meet the majority of what's happening in the neighborhood and therefore would fail that test. So I'm going to go through what the actual test is, which is that the proposed development is to respect and reinforce what exists in the neighborhood. And in slide 1, what you will see is that the lot frontage range is 6.55 to 15.24 meters, and that 38% of the lots on Beta Street itself are smaller than what the zoning bylaw requires. In terms of lot area, 76%. So even if we use the term that the planning department has looked at, this is the majority. 76% of the lots are smaller from a lot area perspective. And if we look at it the other way, the existing site, which currently forms part of the existing physical character, and what development is, what currently exists is actually the second largest lot on Beta Street. It's a 15.24 meter wide lot, and 88% of the lots are smaller than the existing property in terms of lot frontage. 18% are smaller in terms of lot area. So what you see in the graphic below that table on slide 1 is the individual lot frontage and the individual lot area for each property. And I would submit that one cannot see that there is any one numeric measurement that forms the prevailing condition. And now if we just, and what you also see in slide 1 is in their upper right-hand corner, that is a detached dwelling that has a semi-detached dwelling form. It's on an existing lot. It is an existing complying lot, but that is a detached dwelling that's just being completed. Beneath that, the second photograph are 2 detached dwellings, earlier iterations. So you see the first floor is quite elevated on that. That's not what's being proposed. What's being proposed is the rendering that's off to the left. You see that rendering. So it's a lower ground floor, 2 levels of living above. And as compared between those two, a sloped roof and a flat roof, what the proposed flat roof does is it actually lowers the height that's permitted, because the height that's permitted in this bylaw allows an actually taller building. We'll show that in a subsequent slide, because there is no roof above. Also, what you get in the flat roof design is that there is no eaves overhang. So the distance from the side walls to the side lot lines is actually larger from the ground to the sky, because there's nothing interfering with in terms of the eave setback. The next couple of photographs you'll see on that page continue to show detached. All of these have height, floor area, lot frontage, side yard setback variances, whether it's an existing building that was built upon or new construction, detached or semi-detached. And what's proposed in terms of built form fits in and is actually a lower profile than these other properties that are either detached or semi-detached with the elevated first floor. So getting back to the graphic on the lot frontage, in terms of the neighborhood, 36% of the lots within the neighborhood are smaller than the 12 meters that applies to this site. But 12 meters is not the only performance standard, because this area you're permitted to have detached, semi-detached, duplex, and triplex. And there are various performance standards for all of those. So while there's a variety of building types that's permitted, we're not just looking at just one numeric measurement of 12 meters, for example. So 36% in the neighborhood are less than 12 meters, 25% on beta are less than 12 meters, and 7.62 meters forms a substantial representation of the lots on the street. So the proposal right now would fit. You'll see there's an X there. There's only two other lots with a similar lot frontage and lot area. They're right next door. There's no other lot on Beta Street that has that same number.
Okay.
So
That's helpful. That's important.
okay, so in terms of the planning department saying majority, well, right now the subject property today does not meet the majority. It actually contributes to what is the minority, but it respects and reinforces. What the proposal is seeking to do is actually bring the property closer to what, if we'll use the term majority again, closer to what the majority is on the street, which is actually smaller lots. Now, if we go to slide 5, I'm going to show you the official plan text at the bottom, which is often neglected in the review of these applications. Go to slide 5 in the last paragraph.
Yeah, and Mr. Romano, after that, if you can please wrap up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So slide 5, the highlighted section, it says, while prevailing will mean the most, and remember, what we're looking to do is respect and reinforce the prevailing. We're not looking to be exactly like the prevailing. While prevailing will mean the most frequently occurring for the purposes of this policy, this plan recognizes that some geographic neighborhoods contain a mix of physical characters. That's what we have in this neighborhood.
Yep.
In such cases, the direction to respect and reinforce the prevailing physical character will not preclude development whose physical characteristics are not the most frequently occurring. So you don't have to be the most frequently occurring, but they do exist in substantial numbers within the neighborhood, provided that the physical characteristics of the proposed development are materially consistent with physical character of the geographic neighborhood and have a significant presence on properties located in the immediate context or abutting the same street in the immediate adjacent context. And that's exactly what we have in this instance. So even if you feel that the planning department made a somewhat correct interpretation of the overall neighborhood, what we see in the neighborhood is that there are lots that are smaller. And on Beta Street, where the subject site is positioned, there is a substantial representation of those smaller lots, and the proposal is seeking to contribute to that in an appropriate manner. The other slides that I provided show you that the building is sited within the permitted building envelope. A taller building could be constructed, and the only setback variance that's being sought is the outside side yard setback.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romano.
1.2.
Thank you. Mr. Romano, I have to apologize because I did mix it up with the other application. The planning report, you're correct, does not talk about semis being better, but they do mention like 3 or 4 places where you're proposing a detached home.
Mm-hmm.
And as well, I'm happy you told us, because the other concern that they raised in their last paragraph is their planning is that they figure there'd be some pressure on other lots to do this, and you've pointed out there are very few lots that are large enough to be able to have this, so there wouldn't be such huge lineup of other people seeking to do the same here.
Correct.
But when I look, they say only 6 lots have a frontage of 7.62, and those have existing semi-detached dwellings. So that's where I sort of inferred, because they kept mentioning what you're trying to do is do detached. And I just read Mr. Barbini's application. So you're correct. They don't specifically recommend. They just want this refused. So thank you for your presentation. Let's hear from the neighbor at 268 next door, Mike Palaniandi, and then we'll come back to you for response. Sir, are you there?
Hi. Hello. Yes, my name
Hello,
is Mike
sir. I don't know if you've
Palaniandi.
been able to listen to Mr. Romano's presentation, but it's now your turn to let us know what your concerns are.
Okay, thanks. My name is Mike Palaniandi, 268 Beta, and I am immediately going to be affected by this bill.
Yep.
First and foremost, I must say thank you so much for the opportunity. These variances, as I looked at them, these are not minor variances, they are major. And I was looking at the committee and the planning staff recommendation, and you alluded to that as well, that this is creating pressure for the future severance of large size lots. And the last paragraph, they concluded that that this application be refused. I have some concerns with height property. I know when I sent in my letter of objection, it was immediately reduced from 8.7 meter to 8.38 meters. In my opinion, I think that is still too high. Secondly, it's the encroachment to the property line, going from a 1.2 meter to 0.9 meter. One thing I should mention is that we have a lot of water accumulation in the backyard. There's an underground creek that runs in the back, and during heavy rainfalls and snow melts and all that, we have a lot of water damage. Sometimes the water is up to a foot, and there are neighbors adjacent who usually just use a sump pump to get the water out. The concern about the grading, and how we're going to handle all that water that's going out there. One of the other things that I'm concerned about is that this building being that high is losing out. I'm losing out on all my privacy, my natural lighting. There's a proposed window which encroach on my privacy, and I don't know if I can mention about the CA plan on page 2. Talks about there's some on page 2 there are some general notes, but that's about the encroachment on the adjoining properties. It talks about excavation.
Yeah, we don't.
The depth of, but I know we can't get into all of that right now.
Well, the depth is
But
the depth a variance?
Sorry?
I'm just trying to see if depth is a variance. You said depth?
The
I
depth.
see there's a height. There's a height variance of just 1.2 meters. And Mr. Romano mentioned something about he could go higher if he didn't do a flat roof. But I'm just looking at a depth. Is there a depth variance here? I don't see it. You're concerned with the height and you're concerned with the side yard. You'd like it to be 1.2. He's seeking to go to 0.9.
Yeah.
And you're concerned with, issues of
Grading.
water.
Grading, because the property cannot be higher than my property, because I've seen where new builds have gone in and all the grading in the front of the front yard, they're all higher than the existing grading, and it's creating a water problem.
That's not that's something you have to deal with the building. We don't deal with issues of grading.
It's a problem with the water.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know how this will be addressed.
Okay, well, Mr. Romano will respond in his response about your concerns with the height, because I think he already did it as part of, but he'll reiterate, as well as the issue about the side yard and the issue about, you're concerned that there's more building on the lot, less natural, landscaping to absorb the rainwater and things like that. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Okay. So those are your concerns.
Those are my concerns, and I just at the committee already did a refusal on this, on the whole project.
Well, this is a fresh application. This is the first time it's been before us. It may have been a previous application.
I think what was posted there, it was posted there on May 6th, where they did a refusal. It was revised on May 12th.
Oh no, he just revised. It's not a refusal. He just means he made some revisions. He eliminated the variance for the driveway width, and what else? He also made some other changes. That's what we have revised plans. It doesn't mean it was refused. It means that he chose. This is the first time we're hearing it. There's been no refusal of this application.
No, that's a recommendation from community planning to refuse the application. It's still the committee's decision on what to do.
Yes, that's correct. Community planning is recommending that we refuse it. They don't believe that it's appropriate for a severance. But it's the committee that makes the decision. Okay, would there anything like to add, sir, or let's go back and have Mr. Romano respond to your concerns? Mr. Romano?
Mr. Chairman, I can bring Mr. Romano in. I thought that, okay. Mr. Romano, you're unmuted now.
Thank you kindly. Through you, Mr. Chairman. So in terms of the water, the water table is actually much lower than where it is for the proposed construction. We've actually looked at that issue and investigated the city and the engineering department to note that the water table here is lower than the 1.4 meters that's being excavated. Having said that, the other items to consider is that the existing dwelling, which is a 1953 dwelling, has basically no water management on that lot right now. It's an older style construction, and the new dwelling is going to have the weeping tile, the grading, the drainage to maintain all of the water on the subject site, and drain towards the front and the back, which is in excess. The front and the back are in excess of the zoning bylaw requirements for landscaping and soft landscaping. So there's plenty of space to accommodate water percolation, and there's no issue with respect to that.
Okay.
In terms of the issue of the side yard setback, 0.9 meters is a quite common side yard setback within this neighborhood for detached as well as semi-detached. And in this case, we have a 0.9 meter setback, and the window on that one side on the second floor is to a bedroom, so that's a secondary area, and that's actually at a 1.2 meter side yard setback. So there is some undulation on the side, so I don't see that that is a overlook condition that's of concern. You know, should the committee consider that a larger side yard setback than 0.9 meters is preferred on that north side, I'm certainly amenable to speaking to that item if it gets raised. In terms of height, if we go to this slide 3, I think it is, of my presentation, you're going to see that actually you're going to see the difference in the property line. There's a blue line on the right hand side and a green line on the right hand side. That's the difference between the 0.91 and the 1.2 meters, which I believe is minor in nature. And if this were a building that had a slope roof, you can see that the building height can actually be taller. So the 7.87 meter sidewall height is just above the 7.5 meter height where the midpoint of a slope roof is permitted to be. And I show that in a green X along the front facade of the building. I think those were the points that Mr. Palmini had pointed out, sir. Subject to any questions?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romano. Any questions for Mr. Romano or for the neighbor?
I have a question for Mr. Romano on the FSI. You're asking for almost twice the permitted. I'm just trying to understand why you feel that's necessary.
The proposal is for 2 dwellings of 204 square meters, 2,195 square feet, very modest sized dwellings. Where you see, in terms of floor space index within this neighborhood, is that 23% of the lots exceed the 0.4 FSI. And it ranges from 0.1 to 1.14 FSI in the neighborhood. And along Beta Street, it ranges from 0.1 to 1.12 FSI, with 33.6% of the dwellings exceeding 0.4 FSI. Where you're going to see, I can go through a list of other comparables for your construction, but your construction tends to have floor space indices that is higher than the 0.4, in keeping with what is being proposed. You see 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1.1, 1.2, depending on the zoning calculation. And that the proposed FSI is fully within the building envelope that would be permitted for, you know, if you put the 2 buildings together, it's actually smaller building footprint than the zoning bylaw allows as of right. So that's the rationale for the FSI.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romano. Any further questions? Or is someone ready for a motion?
And this is on the amended applications, including, so variance 3 is modified, 6, 7, and variance 8
8 is
has been
eliminated.
deleted.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, with respect to the consent application, I find the lot sizes to be in keeping in this, again, street of very eclectic building forms. And I recommend approval, subject to the standard consent conditions. With respect to the variances, I find them to be minor in nature and meeting the other 3 tests under the Planning Act. And I recommend approval of both variance applications, the revised variance applications, subject to urban forestry condition 3 and conditions requested by engineering and construction services.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. We have seconded for Mr. Taylor's motion. Mr. Kamarick, all in favor? Okay, you have unanimous approval, Mr. Romano. Application is approved.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Palaniandi. Okay, our next application is another Mr. Frank Romano application. And these are for, again, for consent and variances, and this is for a pair of semi-detached dwellings. In this case, the required frontage is 9 meters, and it's proposed is 6.4 to build a pair of semis. There are 9 variances. And as I stated, planning is recommending refusal of the application. Urban Forestry is looking for conditions 1, 2, and 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an application within the, thank you, within the same neighborhood, although this property is located closer to Horner Avenue. And you'll see if we turn up the supporting material that I supplied on July 16th, slide 1. It's a similar map that I shown before, except now we're looking at the immediate context of the VALERMO Drive block within which the subject site is located. And once again, the planning staff have termed majority as being their deciding factor to recommend refusal of the consent application. However, in this instance, they cited the 12-meter lot frontage, and the 12-meter lot frontage is not applicable to semi-detached. Semi-detached is 9 meters. And my review of the neighborhood, which is over 1,200 lots, I've done quite a bit of work in this neighborhood. So my review of the neighborhood of 1,200 lots, 99% of the semi-detached residential dwellings do not comply with the zoning standard. If we looked at the semi-detached dwellings themselves, most of the lots, substantial number of the lots are smaller than 9 meters. Where they sit within this block is that they are, and in this block, I've looked at both the semis and the detached, because there's both within this block. So in this table, you're going to see that 63% of the lots within this block are smaller than the zoning requirement for semi-detached and detached. And 75% are smaller in terms of lot area. There's actually fewer. So in terms of the planning department's term of majority, the minority of lots are larger than what the zoning bylaw requires. So right now, the subject site does sit as a minority within this block, and that there is a substantial representation of lots that are smaller than what's existing and similar to what's being proposed. Not exactly the same, because if we look at lot frontage, we'll see that the range within this block is actually, in terms of lot frontage, is larger than what's proposed. 7.01 meters instead of the 6.4 meters that's proposed. And that is one of the reasons why a semi-detached dwelling is proposed in this instance. Because a semi-detached dwelling places the building in the center of the lot, presents itself as one building instead of 2 separate buildings with much more narrow width to it, and tighter side yard setbacks. So the one building presents itself as one building mass with a larger side yard setbacks. And the 6.4 that's proposed is in keeping with what we see in terms of the range, not only on the it's compatible and reinforces the range that's found not only on VALERMO but within the neighborhood. 69% of the lots are smaller than what the subject site is today in terms of lot frontage, and 88% of the lots are smaller in terms of lot area. So what's proposed again is bringing the proposal closer, the site development closer to what exists in terms of the evolving nature of this block and this neighborhood. I can bring you to slide 5, the official plan text again, but I've just described to you that we're looking at what is how the proposal meets the immediate context and the neighborhood, and that there's got to be a substantial number of generally what is being proposed within the block and in the neighborhood. And I would submit that that is indeed the case in this instance. There's semi-detached to the right, 420 and A and B, VALERMO, and there's semi-detached across the street, 419, 423, and at 428 B and A, there's also similar forms of development. If we go to the other slide, slide 2, is the site plan, I believe. Or no, slide 2. I started with the side elevation because this shows that the building itself is articulated. So we have the 9.5 meter building height, the 8.79 meter midpoint, the 8 meter wall at the front, and then at the back it goes down to 8.08 meters with a 7.27 meter midpoint. So the building complies with the height for the back part, has some variances at the front, and the length variance. The length variance is only applicable because there is a cantina under the rear terrace. So the building length itself is pretty much in compliance. There's a slight variance, 17.68, but the zoning examination has identified the excavated
basement
basement underneath the rear terrace for the length depth variances. So that is something that I've spoken to the client, and they're amenable to removing that if that is a point of concern, but it is completely underground. In the next slide, you're going to see the site plan, and that shows similar sorts of conditions: the building length, the permitted building envelope in terms of the green outline, and where the building length is measured. It's not the building itself; it goes beyond to the porch at the back. So I would submit that what's proposed here is very much something that it respects and reinforces the neighborhood character as well as the block that the subject site is in. And there is one, I believe there is a support letter and no opposition to my knowledge.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's no, I don't appears there's any opposition here.
Correct. Subject to any questions, sir, I submit that this application is an appropriate form of gentle intensification in this neighborhood.
Right. One thing you mentioned, and I think it's in the staff report that they basically said it was the minimum required frontage, I guess, for a semi-detached, I guess, building, it's for the 2 is 18 as opposed to 9, and you were 6.4. So it's not, you're going from 9 to 6.4 or from 18 to 12.8, not from 18 to 6.4, which makes it look a lot more.
Correct.
Okay,
and
thank
again,
you. So
99% of the lots are smaller than
okay,
that.
so thank you for that presentation. And in response to the planning memo. So we don't have any neighbors present in opposition. Any questions for Mr. Romano?
I have a question. Again, relating to FSI, you're now seeking what is more than twice the permitted FSI on this particular site. And again, I'd like to hear the rationale on that. And I again, there I'm concerned about precedents. Anything that's over 2 times, I think is a concerning precedent.
Right, the proposal is 0.86, whereas 0.4 is permitted. So the proposal at 221.3 square meters is 2,385 square feet. Again, a modest size dwelling for the subject site. And what you're going to see along in the neighborhood is that 23% of the lots exceed the 0.4 FSI from 0.1 to 1.14.
I'm sure the 0.4 is
And-
exceeded, but how many exceeded by 2 times?
Okay, so let me point that out. Just bear with me while I do some math. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thirty-five percent of the lots within the same block as a subject site exceed the FSI by more than 2 times. So the new construction that's occurring is indeed.
So these examples you've shown us have more than double FSIs.
Correct.
Okay. You know, and I just want to cover one question. You mentioned the cantina is concluded in either the depth or the length, and that's why you have a variance of 2.8 meters, I guess, on length, right?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I buy that. I buy the explanation. You know, no problem having cantina. It's below ground. But that's where you get into the precedent. Then you find out, oh, you know, like in 2 years from now, when someone comes and uses this as a precedent, they're not going to remember. No one's going to remember, oh, yeah, it really wasn't because it was underground. So that's the problem, you know, that presents. That when someone's relying on something, we don't have the whole story, whether it's something affecting the FSI or the GFA or the depth or the length. We just have the numbers. You know, I'm not saying anything against it, because you've explained why you have a depth variance of almost 3 meters, length, that really isn't there. But it appears on the page, and when someone seeks to try to get length in this neighborhood in the future, they're gonna rely on your variance number 6 here. That's just my comment.
Well, no. Well, I'm going to take it as a question, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. So if I'm permitted to respond.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess there's 2 ways that could be addressed, because when I do a research review in order to inform myself of what's happening in the neighborhood for minor variances, I look at the Committee of Adjustment decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So the Committee of Adjustment decision, should there be an approval, could certainly attach a condition that says that the building depth, the building length includes 2 meter underground excavated porch at the rear.
So basically
Think of
here,
that
you're
fact.
saying of the 3 meters, 2 meters of it is cantina and 1 meter is real, right? Well, 17 to 19.8. Yeah, so it's almost 3. So that's all. I'm just making that point. You're saying 2 meters of that is below ground, but when Mr. Barbini looks at this in 2 years from now, or even you do, and then you say, "Oh, look, they got 9 feet in length here." That's just my comment. That whenever there's always a story behind it. You did mention I don't want to take away your client's cantina. A cantina is good, especially everyone's stocking up on food these days. It's good to have a cantina, but this is where we get into issues with whether it's GFA or FSI, where you rely on a precedent, or the agent relies on a precedent, and we don't know the whole story. So sorry, just a comment.
Well, again, the other way to tie it even closer to and avoid confusion about the underground part is that the building would be from the front wall to the rear wall a maximum of 17.68 meters.
Right. Okay.
That would be a condition.
Okay, so we add that as a condition. Maybe that at least tweaks it. That of the 19.8, it sort of gives something like that. If you, I appreciate you proposing that. That if at least have that type of wording, or tying it to plans. I don't know which plan that would be. That at least helps in the future. That someone's not going to to mislead us and use that as a true precedent for a true above-ground 3-meter variance in length.
Correct.
So, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so is someone ready for a motion?
My comfort level's not quite here for this one to approve it, so if someone else is, please go, because my motion is going to be to the contrary.
Well, I'll table a motion. I guess my thinking is using Mr. Romano's words, this is an example of gentle intensification on a very eclectic street. I think the consents are reasonable and appropriate development for this area, and I recommend approval of them subject to the usual conditions of consent. I find the minor variances to be minor in nature and meeting the other requirements under the Planning Act, and I recommend approval of the variances subject to urban forestry conditions 1, 2, and 3, and engineering and construction services conditions. And Mr. Chair, I would invite you to maybe fabricate a friendly amendment to incorporate the concern about the building length.
Okay, that would be, I guess, something along with Mr. Romano looking, so the variance of 19.8 predicated on the fact that, what were you saying, such and such is above ground, and the remaining 2 meters is below ground. What were the amounts again? And maybe tying it to which elevation we tie it to? Mr. Romano?
17.68 meters from front wall to rear wall, and the side elevations would illustrate that.
It would be easier to just tie it to the plans.
Okay.
But by tying it to the plans, you're not making the
Yeah,
statement on the,
we want it to stand
on
out
the
if someone
precedent.
pulls this up as a precedent to look to see that they really didn't get 19.8 or 2.8 meters beyond the allowable. They actually got a 1 meter beyond, and the rest is just below grade. So that's what we need. We want some reference in the written form, not just in the plan. But I think the plan should be there too. So Mr. Romano, are you telling us which plan that is?
They are the side elevations. So that would be drawing A7, I believe, on both of them.
Okay, and then what about the wording of the 19.8 from front wall to back wall is 17 point, what did you say?
17.68 meters.
Sorry, my suggestion to make it a bit clearer is that the length of 19.8 meters
consists of 17.68 above ground and the remaining whatever below ground only to accommodate a cantina or whatever else. Or
that's still not going to be clear.
what about just saying that it's 17.6 above ground and the balance below ground?
yeah, 17.68, I think you said.
So that variance 6 or 7 variance 6 be restricted to only 17.6
Yeah, so
meters
if
above
someone
ground.
pulls this out, or we happen to take another committee looks at it in 5 years from now, they'll see that what was actually approved was a much smaller above ground, and you know.
So Franco, the basement level is what, 17.68 meters?
No,
Or sorry,
front, yeah.
19.8, and then main floor and above is 17.68?
Correct.
So can we just change the wording of the variance?
I'm in your hands, Miss Madam
Talking to the members.
Secretary.
So if you look at variance 6, the new semi-detached dwelling will have a length of 19.8 meters for the basement level and 17.68 for the main floor and above.
Or you could just 17.68 above ground and whatever below.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
concerned about calling it above or below ground because the portion of the basement does go above ground.
Sure, and all I care
And
is that
that's
something
why-
stands out when someone tries to use this as a precedent to get 19, a 3-meter length variance in the future. That
Yeah,
something
and that's why,
comes out at you and says, no, 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 that's not what happened there.
and the plans are labeled as first floor and basement. So if we call it the basement level.
Yep.
Is that okay with you, Mr. Taylor? As part of your motion? Okay. So the motion by Don Taylor is to approve the application subject to forestry conditions 1 to 3, development engineering conditions, standard consent conditions, and with a notation that the length, which is variance number 6, reads 19.8 meters for the basement level, and anything on the first floor or above is restricted to 17.68.
Yes, okay. Do we have a seconder for that? I don't think anyone seconded that because it came to me for the wording. So we need a seconder for Mr. Taylor's motion. Laura, I can second it, but.
I can second that.
Okay, seconded by Laura. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 3-1. Mr. Kamarick is opposed. Thank you, Mr. Romano.
Thank you. Kindly appreciate your assistance and your time. Have a
Okay,
great day.
we'll see you again.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next application is item number 19. And would anyone like a break or? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. And we'll reconvene here at 3:30.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll get back into our agenda. We're at item number 19, 333 Sydney BELSEY CRESCENT. And this is an application to maintain the existing apartment building with retail convenience store at grade. This matter was before the committee in 2014 and received a 5-year approval to June 26, 2019. This matter was deferred from the June 20th hearing. We now have Councillor Nunziata is written in full support for 70 square meter retail store to be maintained, and I believe now there would be no time limit proposed unless the committee seeks to. I don't believe the councillor was looking for that. And the purpose of the there was a deferral. I believe that deferral was some time ago to allow them to correctly identify the variances.
And I believe at some point they reduced the size.
Yeah, June 20th, 2019. Yeah, I think it was larger, now it got reduced to 70 square meters. And that's
Yep.
what the councillor is supporting, and that's what the application is for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is the applicant with us? Berardo Massioli.
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome. So I don't know if you heard
you,
my introduction. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add. Can you confirm this is for now permanent approval, not just for another time limit?
Yes, with this application, we're asking for it to be maintained permanently.
Okay. Committee members, any questions for the agent, or are we ready for a motion? Yeah, transportation, I believe, is okay with this.
I don't think there are any conditions.
No.
It's a relatively straightforward application.
Okay, is someone ready to make a motion if there's no questions?
Yeah, I can make that motion. Sure, I can do that. I think this neighborhood is a bit of a food desert, so I think having a little variety store there is a good thing. So I move acceptance of this variance.
Thank you. Seconder for Ms. Alderson's motion, Mr. Kamarick, all in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Massioli.
Thank you.
Okay. Next application is 14 Elder Avenue, item number 20. This is an application for a detached dwelling with an attached garage, a Etobicoke York special. We get a lot of those. And this one has proposed 5 variances. We have a staff report for information. I believe after consulting with staff, there are changes, and staff is now in support of the application. This application was again deferred from the hearing of October 24th, 2019. And we have before us on this application Eddie Perez, agent, and we have 2 representatives from the Long Branch Neighborhood Association, Ms. Mercado and Gibson, Ms. Gibson, who spoke earlier this afternoon, and as well we have a neighbor at 10 Elder as well with concerns. So, Mr. Perez, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah, Chairman and committee members.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you make us a brief presentation? We have the Long Branch people, and as a neighbor here on with concerns.
Okay, we went to committee on October 24th, and it was deferred to planning wanted some changes. We then made a quick meeting with them. We met with them in November 12th, and they wanted some changes to the front elevation. It was November 12th, and we went over it. We made the changes. We emailed it to them.
Yep.
And to the committee members as well. They agreed with it. So we moved forward. We were supposed to have a meeting March 26th. That got deferred. And we never, to this point, got any correspondence from Long Branch. We only got that recently, which is July 26th. Then we ended up getting an arborist report. We got an arborist report. I submitted it Monday. I got the arborist through as quick as he can. And I emailed it to Nicole Moxley. I'm not sure if you received it or not, but I did attach a arborist report. If you like that.
Letters of support and objection.
Yep.
I see a bunch of letters of support and letters of objection. We also have the planning report, as I mentioned, is for information. It goes through the history of, that you made some changes, and they conclude then at the end of the report, the current architectural plan has been revised to address staff concerns. The revisions to the windows, facade, other built form elements reinforce the rhythm of the adjacent properties and renders the proposal more in keeping with the character of the area. And that was for information. And we do have the Long Branch people here. I'm advised to let us know what their concerns are. So why don't we then move on? So we see the changes you've made. Sorry?
Yeah. Can I just say a few other things?
Sure, of course. But can you try to, I'm having trouble, you're sort of going in and out. Can you try to maybe get a little closer to your computer?
Okay. Yeah, I just have a couple more points. So,
go ahead.
I have the arborist report here if you want to have a quick look at the site plan, which I can put on the
So
screen.
who did you submit the arborist report to?
I submitted to Nicole Melrose on Monday, but it seems like she didn't put it online.
No,
Like
so
that
if you
this morning,
submitted
it
on
wasn't there.
Monday, it's past the deadline to submit anything. So the committee does not have that information.
Okay, and then, because we only got the information that they wanted a report on Friday, so I got our report done as quick as I could. Yeah, so another thing I can just present is all the pictures in the neighborhood. So you can see that we're not out of the character of the area.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's some pictures that we have. You can see right beside there.
Can you explain what you're showing us?
There's four houses, like 4-story houses right beside the number 63 Elder. And there's a lot of 4 stories in the area.
So what is that property? I see there's sort of an advertising sign there. What is that? Is that like townhouses that go down off the street? It says luxury towns.
2 sets of stuff. Correct. And there's 2 sets of them. There's another set further down.
Okay.
So there's a lot of townhouses.
How deep are those
And a lot
lots?
taller than your building.
Yeah,
A lot taller.
how deep do those, how many, it looks like it's the pattern down the street. Is that what they're doing? There's a whole bunch of townhouses development next to your lot?
That's a little bit further down.
Oh, I thought you're right next door. You're not next door there? What's the property you showed
Not
us?
next door. That's a similar house to the one next to us.
I see.
So that's number 63. The one next to us is not 63.
Okay, I thought that perhaps that was your house,
12 and 16.
the subject property.
No, then there's
You're at 14. You're at 14. What number is that, Mr. Perez?
this one's 63.
63,
I have
so it's
many more
quite a
pictures.
distance away.
I'm just having trouble showing them. But I have a lot of other pictures that I submitted to the city, and I have them here. I just don't know how to put them on.
Mr. Chairman, I think what's happening is the agent is trying to share content, but he's not enabled to do so with our setup. You can only refer to stuff that you've submitted already. So there's this photo and one other photo.
Yeah,
I see
That's
29
it.
Carnation.
other
You've
photos
given
there.
us a picture of 29
yeah, there's a whole
Carnation.
bunch of photos there. Yeah,
That's 29 Carnation. 31 Carnation.
yeah, there's 29 Carnation. Then there's a lot of other ones with
26
more
Street.
townhouses in the area.
Okay.
20, it's just showing that the houses are in character of the area. There's a lot of houses like this. A lot of them went for the same FSIs that we're going for, and our variances are minor. We have no coverage. We only have side yard on one side, which is 0.91, We have 1.2 on the other side. The height was slightly over by 48 centimeters, and the underside of the soffit by 78 centimeters. But planning was okay with all the variances that we had. That's why we didn't make any changes further.
Okay, I see 13 Elder. That's like across
you.
the street.
Yeah, that's right across the street. That's a different house, which is not in character of the area. Ours is in keeping with the character of the area. That one's right there. It's not character with what's in the area. That's more.
I assume that house went to
ours is more in
committee.
keeping.
I assume that house
Yeah.
went to committee of adjustment for approval.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
Okay, so anyway, thank you for that presentation, Mr. Perez. Let's hear what the neighbor has to say and then what the Long Branch Neighborhood Association has to say, and you'll have a chance to respond to their concerns. Is Mr. Bosco Talenta there, please? Neighbor at 10.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, there's something wrong. WebEx is freezing on Mr. Talenta and it's not allowing me to unmute him. Maybe we can try going back to him after.
For sure. Let's hear from the Christine Mercado. I assume Christine and Judy, you're both speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Christine.
Welcome back.
Okay, so thank you. Okay, so
Okay.
The LBNA actually does object to this application. We do feel that it does fail the four tests. It doesn't fulfill the intent and purpose of the bylaw. So we submitted FSI data. We've submitted FSI data on Elder.
You're fading out on me again, Christine?
Sorry,
Yeah.
is that better?
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay, so we submitted FSI data on Elder.
Yep.
So if you look at that data, it's actually just a simple table. You can see where 10 Elder is, and it's got a point at a 0.545, and it's a triplex. And then 13 Elder is, which is across the street, is 0.60, and this application is actually going higher than that.
Okay, so 13 is the one we just saw on the screen from Mr. Perez, right? The modern looking.
Correct.
And that's a little lower FSI than this one.
Right. And if you look, an Elder is actually on a zoning split. So this application is actually in an RD zone, and what's on the south side of Elder is actually in an RM zone. And those townhouses, that townhouse block, is actually a site area specific plan. So that was done with full consultation with the residents of the area. And so the orientation of the buildings, so on and so forth. So that was all done through a public consultation process. So it's not exactly a fair comparison because it's out of zone. Carnation is 2 blocks away, so it's not comparable. And if you look at the letters of support, the letters of support are on 26th Street, so which is also not on Elder. So and it's also in a different zone. So we do have concerns with how the most affected neighbor is having to deal with deal with something that's actually even bigger than his triplex. We do think that according to the official plan, this actually does not comply. It doesn't comply in policy 4.1.5C, where the prevailing heights, massing, scale, and density and dwelling type of nearby residential properties. It's, as you can see by that table on Elder, it is not the same. And this particular property is a standard lot size. It's not undersized. So the bylaws should work for a property. So we do fail to understand what the need is for these bylaw variances. We don't think that it is compliant with 4.1.5E, where it's the prevailing design of driveways. So double car garages are not common on Elder. In fact, it's the patterning for parking solutions is a shared driveway with rear parking solutions. And we also have concerns about the 4.1.5G prevailing pattern of side yard setbacks and landscaped open space. So if you look at the site plan, there are trees that are on the border between the next door neighbor and this application. So this house is quite clearly not in the building envelope. Okay, I've been hearing a lot about building envelopes today. And what they're doing is that they're asking for the building envelope and then they're asking for more. And I think that it unfairly impacts the neighbors. Right now, it's a cute triplex that addresses missing middle housing. And now what they're going to see is a brick wall. And there is a danger in losing the trees that are on the property line. So in looking at the policies, we do feel that this is contrary to the official plan. And we do think that a smaller proposal would be more appropriate. So with that, we hope that you will consider refusing this application. And so the side yard setbacks and an FSI reduction is in line. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, Judy Gibson, you're going to approach different matter that Christine Mercado presented.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of this committee. My name is Judy Gibson, and again, I'm the Vice Chair of the Long Branch Neighborhood Association and the Chair of the Tree Canopy Preservation and Enhancement Committee. And I'm requesting refusal of this application in its current form, and it's because of the trees. And Ms. Mercado already pointed out the trees that will be at risk, but City Council did direct on March 16th, 2018, when they adopted their item PE 25.1, tree protection through the committee of adjustment process, that there are requirements for an application to be complete. And I believe, thank you for pulling up my letter. There's a number of items that are listed in here that the applicant has not complied with. And this is the whole thing. These variances that are being requested are not minor relative to the zoning bylaws and the official plan policies. And the impact is not minor on the neighbors that are living in the triplex immediately beside it, because it's going to replace a view of the trees and the sky with a brick wall. And if you just go to the previous page, please, there's a picture of the, go up a little further. There you go, just stop there, please. These are the windows for all 3 units in the triplex. And right now they look over the trees and there's space between them that they can view the trees. And what it's going to be replaced with, the trees that you see there, according to the applicant's plan, will be removed, and they'll be looking at a brick wall instead. And I know the neighbor is going to be speaking about his concerns about that. As mentioned earlier to this committee, Long Branch is one of the hardest hit neighborhoods in the entire city. We're number 8 in the entire city for tree canopy loss. And it's a result of applications such as this, where the applicant is not taking into account the existing mature green infrastructure and protected trees when they're submitting their plans. And so now our tree canopy is down to 15% when it was at 26.5%. We're down to 15% at a time when the city has set goals to grow it to 40%. And with all due respect to the committee, subject to forestry conditions attached after the fact to an approval at the Committee of Adjustment has actually proven to be an ineffective way to protect mature trees, and is one of the reasons why City Council made the motion they did back in March 2018 for relevant information to be put in front of this committee so that the committee could take a look at all the impact on the bylaw protected trees as part of the decision that they're making. If you take a look at now my page 2 in the letter that I submitted, you'll see one of the few mature trees on this street. And the applicant showed a number of examples where buildings have been replacing trees. And this is a tree that's in front. This is a city very large protected honey locust. And you can see it's got a beautiful large canopy. There's nothing in this plan as to how it's going to be protected. And if you go to the next page, you'll see the tree canopy from an overhead view. And you'll see the honey locust in the bottom of the tree canopy, and the second circle that's at the top of this visual is all the canopy that's at risk of being removed as a result of it being replaced with building. So it's a substantial amount of tree canopy that is projected to be lost with this particular application. And these trees are valuable members of the Long Branch tree canopy, which is a key defining characteristic, and they provide much needed green infrastructure for the residents of the neighborhood, and particularly the residents right next door that live in the triplex. The City of Toronto on October 2nd, 2019 adopted an item to declare a climate emergency. They've launched the first resilience strategy to integrate Toronto's major climate and environmental plans. And one of the goals is under infrastructure is to be resilient to climate change and preserve the tree canopy and grow to 40%. So because of all these reasons, right now the units at the triplex look out on protected trees, and we would ask that those trees remain protected by refusing this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Gibson or Ms. Mercado before we move on to the neighbor? Hopefully the neighbor is the owner of the triplex next door. I think we have his letter, and it stated that they were going to be abroad or something. So I don't know. You have him back on the line?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, let me give that one more try here, because I think we lost him, but there's another call-in user. No, that's not him. Let me try again. Mr. Talenta, Bosco Talenta? Mr. Talenta?
Yes, I'm on phone. Could you hear me?
Yep, we hear you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay. Sorry for this. I don't know why it doesn't allow you to unmute me, but I was on a computer all the time.
Okay, so you were able to hear the applicant submissions and the submissions of the two directors from the Ratepayer Association? You were able to hear those presentations, sir?
Yeah, I saw that application, and then of course I submitted a written concern.
Yes, we have your letter. We have your letter, and we'd like to now hear from you orally as to what your concerns are. The impact, I know you're concerned with the side yard setback variance, but
yeah, my major concern it is number 2, because it is allowed by law 1.2 meters minimum distance, and then it is 0.91. If, for example, the applicant is able to fulfill that according to the bylaw, of course, I will not object any other part of his application.
oh, so you're saying if he could give you that side yard, which is just a foot more than he had proposed, then you're happy with you're okay with all the other issues. Is that what you're saying about the?
Yeah, that's correct. Because simply I couldn't have any impact on policy of the city, allowing, for example, mega houses. With of course, on the other side, it gives more consumption of energy, more pollution, and other stuff. But I couldn't have impact on that policy.
Okay.
Only my concern, if there is chance to move this for those 30 centimeters toward the west, because I don't know on each side of the property.
Yeah, I see it's 29. It's basically a foot. So perhaps if Mr. Perez could accomplish that. Otherwise, it's a foot closer. I don't know what the impact of being 1 foot versus 1 foot closer.
Yeah, because you have to have in mind also that from the roof will be again more than foot. That means it will immediately it is almost on the border of property.
Right.
So
okay, perhaps he can. Again, this is a new construction. So perhaps we'll hear from him in his rebuttal whether he's able to do that. And then he also has the Ratepayer Association, the Long Branch, have bigger concerns with the tree and other issues. Okay, was there anything else you'd like to add? You just would like him to respect the bylaw on your side yard for the benefit of your your triplex.
For 3, of course, if there is chance to save them, it's okay. If there is no, again, I couldn't have impact on that stuff because it's policy of the city. So that's my major concern. It should be followed by law. That by law should be followed.
Okay, thank you.
regarding distance, okay?
Okay, so let's go back to Mr. Perez then in rebuttal. And Mr. Perez, as you've heard the concerns of the Long Branch representatives with respect to generally and with respect to the trees. And then you've heard from a neighbor next door, Mr. Talenta. He would be satisfied if you could just shift the house over and give him his extra 0.29 of a meter, extra foot.
As per shifting it, I had talked to the owner. The owner is okay with shifting it from the garage back, so that where that indent is on the site plan, we can make it 4 feet there, so we can keep the double garage, because if we reduce the garage a foot, it won't be double anymore.
So can you eliminate that
You see where we have
variance?
that jog? Well,
You can't
from the
eliminate the
garage up, we
variance,
can
you're
make it
saying
4 feet
just
there.
on the, sorry, we were talking at the same time. So what he's asking for, you're saying you
See what
can't
I-
do, you can only do from the garage back. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I had talked with the owner. They're okay with doing that.
Is that what your plans show, though?
Now, our plans show a jog in the middle to put windows there, but we can make that whole back part 4 feet from the garage back. If you put the site plan up, I can point at it.
Okay. Let's see
I
this.
think one of the issues that the Long Branch Community Association had was with the double garage. So you're
Yeah,
saying
okay,
that
so
you would
we're dealing first, I guess,
make
with the
it a
concern
single
of the
garage.
neighbor, and then we can deal with that. So perhaps, so you're saying the Long Branch doesn't want the double garage. The
Yeah,
neighbor would
right
just
there
like
where
it shifted.
in the middle there. Yeah, in the middle there, there's an indent. We can, from there back, we can do it 4 feet. So the garage where that 1.21 is, from there back, we can do it at 1.2. And then the garage, so the facade would stay the same, just the back portion would narrow.
But you were
How does that
previously
change the
deferred
FSI?
and you had an opportunity
it
to
brings it
make
down
any
a bit.
revisions. So any opportunity to
No,
make,
because
you had the chance. Your application is the way it is right now.
Okay,
We
thank
only
you,
got this
Barbara.
info we only got the info, Barbara, on July 26th from Long Branch. Planning was okay with it all along.
You mean June 26th?
We never had time. It was July 26th. They gave us a couple of days. This was before them last year, and they never got back to us. The Long Branch only got involved July something. That's when we found out. We got a tree arborist report done, and the arborist report is showing that we're gonna keep the front tree. That's why we did the driveway like that. The driveway is curved, and that's why we're asking for a variance just at that end part, so we can get the car in. But we want to keep the front trees. 2 of the side trees are undersized, and 2 of them are gonna have to be cut down, but all the trees in the back are remaining. I did submit the arborist report. Like I said, I only found out July 26th. We didn't have a lot of time to do this, and we did it as quick as we could. And I think we did a good job. And we're in keeping with the 4 variances, within the 4 tests. We went
Eddie,
to planning,
yeah.
Planning never got back to us. Transportation was okay with it. Everybody was okay with it. We only got surprised on July 26th.
You mean
We never
June,
heard
we
from
keep
them
saying
on
July
June
26th, you mean June 26th. We're only the 22nd today.
Yeah.
You mean June 26th, right, Mr. Perez?
No, sorry, July 16th, sorry.
July 16th,
They wrote
okay.
the July 6th. I'm
So
sorry, I got mixed up.
6
July
days ago,
16th.
you're saying 6 days ago you only found out about it. So you right away got an
that's when,
arborist report done? As soon as you heard that they
Then,
needed it.
as soon as we got that, I did an arborist report right away.
Okay,
But we only got from Long Branch, like I said, on July 16th, sorry. I had the number mixed up.
okay, thank you. Committee members, any further questions or are you ready for a motion?
I just wanted to thank the Long Branch Neighborhood Association for their presentation again and for clarifying the zoning issues on that street, because I was unaware of that. So it is a bit of a red herring to compare what is going on at that end of the street with what is going on at the other end of the street, which is which are the high townhouses. So I just wanted to let everyone know that based on the FSI and the diagram of the front south elevation, I will not be supporting this application.
Okay,
today.
so you're making a motion to refuse?
Not necessarily, but I can make a motion to
Because
refuse. I
we,
just
we
wanted
asked
to
our
let them-
questions, so we're in committee now to make a decision. So if you'd like
I
to
can
make a motion,
to
make a motion.
refuse the application. I can make a motion to refuse the application.
Okay. Okay,
Based
let's see.
on the FSI and the front south elevation drawings, and the fact that it is, the street is divided up into two different zoning
Right,
issues. Yeah,
so the row of townhouses or double row of townhouses we saw in that picture is way on the other end of the street.
in a different zoning area,
Right,
yeah.
and it's obviously, they're much
zoned
deeper
differently.
lots to allow those townhouses going sideways on
Yep.
the lot. Okay, thank you.
And that's an RM zoning, I believe, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
Thanks,
Alderson.
Christine, for that clarification. So I won't be supporting it. So I make a motion not to support it.
Okay, so we have a motion to refuse the
To refuse.
application. Okay, do we have a seconder for that motion? Mr. Taylor, all in favor? Opposed? You're opposed?
Point of order. Can we defer this?
Not at this point.
No? Okay, then I'm going to support refusal.
Okay, so the application is refused. Thank you, Mr. Perez. Thank you, Long Branch people. And thank you, Mr. Talenta. Okay, so we're moving on to item number 21, which is 35 HEATHERGLEN Road. And this is an application for another detached dwelling with an attached garage. And we have revised plans, I believe. No. We have 7 variances. We have revised plans. Planning has advised that they have no further concerns. They did have concerns, and this matter was deferred from the January 16, 2020 hearing in order for the applicant to make revisions. And we have the agent appearing on this, Giorgio Lolos, and as well the neighbor from 33 HEATHERGLEN, Brian Taylor, on this application. Are you present? Mr. Lolos?
Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so yeah, this matter was revised. I believe you've made some changes. We have revised plans. We have a covering letter.
Yes, we have to.
And we have a planning report, the initial one, as well as we have a further, after I guess making the changes where they've stated they have no further concerns.
Correct.
And we do have a neighbor here with concerns. Okay.
If it's the neighbor to our south, I believe he's for support.
Okay, well, perhaps he can tell us that. I do see we have a letter of opposition. Let me see who that's from. No, it's from the neighbor next door. He sent an email January 13th, so it's been around for a while. I don't know if it was before or after you made your changes.
Okay.
He says, in regards to new build, my concern is the height of the new building. I want to be assured that new build will not affect the safe exhaust of my furnace, that all gas will gone up the chimney and without any down pressure. Will the updraft not cause a problem? So he mentions height, but then he just mentions that issue. So perhaps we can hear from him. He may not have a concern because he wrote that email back in January.
Back on January, yes.
Before you were here. Okay,
Yes,
perhaps
he
he's
was
here.
present
Mr.
at the
Taylor?
original meeting.
I do have Mr. Taylor. Let me just unmute him right now. Mr. Taylor, you are unmuted.
Yeah, Mr. Taylor, you're listed on my list that you're here in opposition, and I do have a copy of your email of concern about the height and the potential downdraft in your letter dated back in January. So I just want to know what your concern, if you still have concerns, and what those concerns are.
I do not have any concerns. I support the building.
Oh, okay. So that's very nice of you to get on the line here and indicate you're in support. I did have a note here that you are actually opposed, so it's good to know that you are in fact not opposed and in support. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so committee members, we don't have anyone in opposition here. We have revised plans. This matter was deferred. The applicant made changes. Community planning advised they have no further concerns. Do you have any further questions, or are you ready for a motion?
I'm good for a motion. Okay, I find the application to meet the 4 tests, and I would therefore like to propose approval of the application with no conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Comeric. Seconder for that? Mr. Taylor, all in favor? Have your approval unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good afternoon.
Okay, you too. The next item is item number 22, 158 Brentwood Road North. It's an application for, again, a new detached dwelling with an attached garage. We have 6 variances. We have urban forestry requesting conditions 1 and 5. Yeah. And we have community planning asking for a condition in the event of approval that it be tied to the site plan to be built substantially in accordance, and transportation advises they have no objection. We have with us on this application just the agent, Marin Zabzuni. Mr. Zabzuni, are you here?
Good afternoon. Yes, I am.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, planning has asked that it be tied to the site plan.
Yes.
But we have newer plans.
Okay, perhaps we can hear from the agent on that. Sir?
Hi.
See, we have
yes,
community planning, refers back to their report of January 20th, 2020, and say their comments still stand. And in
Yes,
that
the-
comments, they
the
want it to be developed in accordance with the site plan submitted December 11th, 2019. But in fact, we now have a Madam Secretary, a fresher or a newer site plan?
It's dated February 2020, so it's not that fresh.
Okay. Mr. Zabzuni, can you enlighten us? Planning back in, back before this matter was before the committee.
Yes, the site plan is virtually the same. When we went back to committee the first time, we got letters of support from neighbors. We talked to planning, gained their support as well. The reason we deferred the first time was due to having further correspondence with urban forestry. We applied to urban forestry with an arborist report, and we're making very good progress. And they're just waiting for the committee decision in order to move forward with the tree permits. And the site plan is the same, so
It can't be the same because your variances are different. Your coverage and floor space index are lower based on the notice that went out compared to the minutes from January.
The reason that the coverage is lower is because there was an error on the first zoning notice for the lot area. They had a smaller lot area, and actually the lot area was not correct. Now it is correct, which means the FSI and lot coverage are smaller, but the house drawings and design is the same.
So you're still at 43.3% coverage?
No, it's less. It's at 39%.
Okay, because if you look at the planning report, they explain why they wanted it tied to plans. The reason they wanted it tied to plans was because of this, it's occasioned by the deck, right? So we need to make reference to the new plan, and we have to satisfy ourselves, and that's why we're asking you, is the new plan, for the purposes of having it tied to the plans, the same or different than the old plans?
And you've also eliminated a variance for side yard setback.
Right. So.
Oh, was I think an inch or two that we were triggering, if I recall, because it's been half a year. Yes, you're correct that it was a very minor variance that we were able to remove on the latest. So I would tie it to the latest site plan, as it's a smaller width and smaller home altogether.
Okay. I'm reading from the planning report. So the reason they want it tied to plans is because even though, and now the numbers have gone down, but you were at 43.3%. whereas the maximum permitted cover is 33%. So they said the increased lot coverage is due in part to the proposed rear deck, which accounts for approximately 5.5. The lot coverage of the dwelling without the proposed covered deck would be 37%. So that's, I think, what they're trying to just keep you honest, that whatever your coverage is, that assuming the deck hasn't changed, 5.5% of that percent is with respect to the deck. And that's what they want to ensure, that you don't eliminate or reduce the deck and suddenly make the house bigger. Right? So
No,
that the 5.5% out of your coverage, they want to make sure that that is reserved to the proposed rear deck. Because otherwise you could, maybe you wouldn't do this, but someone else could say, okay, I'm going to not have a deck and I'm going to add that 5.5% onto the house. So that is why they want it held in accordance with the plans. And that's why we have to sort of know that on your plans, which you've made reductions, you still have 5.5% out of your coverage variance, which is now reduced, relates to the deck.
That is correct. And there's also an FSI variance, so we could never make the house bigger, as that would increase the FSI, and that's another variance we're going for. So overall, the deck is still there, and it's still the same review for the planning. That's still the same.
Okay, but
consequence.
I hear what you're saying, but we want that protection. Planning is asking for it, and I think it's valid. Because, you know, you're saying you couldn't do it because I guess that would put you over on your floor space index, and that may be true, but I think it's appropriate here. We just have to tie it to the correct plan. So if you tell me that your new plan, and give me the date of when it was received by the committee, perhaps Madam Secretary Treasurer can do that, that plan should show a deck of 5.5%. Of the same dimensions as on your own plan. That's what we need to know.
Correct, and you're welcome to compare. Both plans are online, and they're the same there. So yes, you can tie to the new plan, and it's going to be the same type of review from planning.
So, Madam Secretary Treasurer, what's the date of those new plans?
They're dated February 25th, 2020.
Okay, and did they show the same deck that was shown, applicant? Can you confirm for us that the deck is exactly the same as on the December 11th plan?
I'm going to try to look it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you've gone to 39.3 now from the whatever. So out of that 39.3, either to have it verbally or tied to the plan, that 5.5% of that is in fact the deck. So you have to subtract 39.3, take 5.5 off. You're at whatever that is, 34 or 33.7 or whatever it is.
So looking at the old plans, the dimension of the deck is the same. A width of 7.68 with a depth of 3.35.
Right, so it's 33.8 is the house, 5.5 is the deck, for a total of 39.3. That we can reference both in verbally and or just show it on the plan, the new February plan. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
And again, we have variances 1 or 5, so we'll either permit or injure a tree and or refusal. And again, in the event of injuring a tree, he's going to have to make an arrangement with urban forestry, I assume, to whatever they require to be done. Or replace trees on the lot. Sir, I assume you're going to be, or your client is going to be planting new trees on this lot after the house is built?
Correct, and
You'll
even
have
the
to
immediate
negotiate.
neighbors want to plant new trees as well, because as one of them is allergic to one of the oak trees, and we have a support letter that was submitted months ago to show that as well. So absolutely, we're happy to meet all forestry conditions.
Okay.
Sorry, can I get you to confirm something? You mentioned that the error was due to zoning calculating the wrong area, but I'm comparing your site statistics and you identified the lot area differently. So previously you had it as 467 square meters, and on the revised site statistics that we have now, you've identified your lot area as larger at being 512.85 square meters. So I would just like you to confirm publicly that that information is correct, and should that information not be correct, you would have to reapply for the correct numbers later on.
The stream cut off a little bit. What I heard was you want confirmation on 512 square meters for the lot area. Is that all you're asking?
Yes, because previously you identified it incorrectly, not Toronto Building, as 467 square meters.
Right. So the lot area is 512 as per the latest drawings and zoning notice. That is correct.
And you've confirmed that based on the survey?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I believe the application meets the 4 tests with the revised numbers, and I would therefore like to propose approval, subject to forestry condition 1, and also subject to the build being done in accordance with the site plan of February, as submitted February 25th, 2020. I think planning was tying it just to the site plan, yeah.
Okay, that's your motion. We have a seconder for that motion? All in favor? You have unanimous approval. Thank you, Mr. Zabzuni.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay, our last application of the afternoon, item 23 A, B, and C, 67 Harding Avenue, which is a consent for severance and related variances for 2 new detached dwellings proposed to be built on the lots as divided. We have 7.62 frontages, whereas 15 meters is required. We have 6 variances on each of the 2 applications for variances of the lots as divided. We have planning weighing in to advise that they no longer have any objections. Where is that? That was their email dated July 14th. There was a previous planning report dated February the 3rd. This matter was actually deferred from the hearing February 13th prior to COVID. So.
Also, the counselor wants it deferred, but is that an old letter?
Yeah, I say, Councillor Lindsay, got an old letter in favor of this to make changes, and I guess perhaps we can hear from Mrs. Evangelista about that, because we do have a memo now from planning, and I believe the councillor, that was prior to the previous, prior to the deferral, and as well, I'm looking here at the staff memo, that they have dated July 15th, that they have no further objections to revised plans which were submitted July the 14th, the day before. Ooh. Who's someone just with, is Mrs. Evangelista with us? Because that's the only person. So perhaps we can get her on the phone. Is this about the last application rather than waiting for an hour to get WebEx on? Huh? Well, the fact it's the last application. All right, okay, 3 and 5. Ooh. Laura, you're still with us? No? Hmm. Yep. Why did it event? Why did it end like that? It's like a. Oh God. Well, we could just maybe do it on the like, because it's just Laura and an agent with no neighbors. Well, then even if Laura's absent, we have quorum. Like, we're not going to wait an hour here. Oh, because it has to be on YouTube. It has to be public. So we're not public, eh? We're not on. No. So close. Yeah, this one seems okay now. Although it's weird because this the requirement is 15 compared to the other two that they weren't in favor of. It was like 12 or 9. Doesn't make. Maybe it's where it is. Yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying that, you know, maybe it's a different area where they're encouraging semis and severances in this area compared to the other one, because it's actually a bigger variance. You know, 15 foot is required, and the other ones are 12 and 9, and they object. And this one at 15, they're okay with it. But again, when they bring in precedents, but when you know, you've been doing this long enough, you know, there's always exceptions or reason, there's a this. So if it doesn't say, because 2 years ago someone said, look, they got that, and they don't explain all the backstory. Yeah, exactly. It's like, how did that happen? You know what? Hopefully we can get back to having the people here when we're in phase 3 in Toronto. Like, they can just socially distance. Well, as long as we have at least Ida or Laura, we can. But you don't have the YouTube. Although YouTube, you're saying they can hear us in YouTube? Okay, well.
Miss Evangelista, hello? Ida? Hello, Ida?
Just do it on the phone. Is she on the phone or?
Oh, what's the password? This is ridiculous. Laura needs the event password. I can see Ida here, and I have her unmuted. It says this attendee is not paying attention. I did now. I did. Okay. Miss Evangelista? Hello? I see her as two different. I see Ida on two different. I have both unmuted. I have that right here. Hello, Ida.
Call her up on the phone.
Hello, Miss Evangelista. I can see the call-in user bar, but we can't hear her. Okay. Mute all of this.
Can we just someone's cell phone, or it's got to be?
yourself or no? I have to do it from there. Make this change. Crazy, crazy. Okay. So, CC, I've unmuted you. Everything's unmuted. She's unmuted. The microphone on the computer. Yes. No, it's not on. They're on the X. I'm trying, but it says it's not off. No, that's just me. Ida, can you hear us? Hello? Ida? Why don't we just put her on speakerphone?
Yeah.
Regular telephone. If you two can hear us now, we'll be able to hear that too. Adam can't hear you.
So we have to defer that, Can we not defer this one item till next week? I guess, what are we gonna do? We can't deal with it. There's no opposition. What else can we do? We're sitting here for an hour already, so.
So do you want me to call her so that she can hear Mr. Clark's specific motion or whatever the trade motion? Call her and tell her that's what we're doing. Okay, do you want to close that one file?
You can just, as long as that's in the minutes, it really doesn't have to, but it doesn't matter either way. It's a difference. Yeah.
Listen, though our application crashed, right? No, I know that, but the thing is, if it's not streaming on YouTube, it's not a public process.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on speakerphone. Want to say this is Mark?
Hey, Ida, the numbers, sorry about this, we're dealing with technology problems. Were you still planning on deferring or no?
No, I wasn't. I was
Okay.
gonna go forward. I was gonna take the hit.
Okay, so what the committee has suggested is we'll
Yes.
defer your application until next week. We have a hearing on July 30th.
July 30th?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So we're not resending notices. We're the only one here participating, so we're deferring you to July 30th due to technical issues. And your application will be heard then.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. So I can't do, I know because it was public.
Yeah.
All right, July 30th.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Barb.
Thanks, Ida.
Bye.
Okay, so a motion to close.
Well, do we not need a motion to do that deferral?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was turning it back.
You
So-
can mark Laura absent.
Wait, can you, no, she's there.
Oh, she's there? Okay.
I'll just close this, just close the screen, so Laura. Just sit there. Put the Zoom back on and see if Laura can hear us.
There she is.
Everything's unmuted.
Okay. Laura, can you hear us?
Guess not.
No, I can see her blinking.
Anyway,
Well, we can do it without her too.
exactly.
Okay, can I get a motion to defer 67 Harding Avenue to July 30th?
We'll move that.
Second,
Unanimous.
do you want to close, do you want to do a motion to close 78 6th Street?
Yep.
I'll move that file be closed. All in favor?
Okay. Just in time for rush hour. Whatever rush hour is.
There's no
It's
rush
not as
hour.
bad. Okay. End the event.
So, someone call.
Okay, so of the 7 hours we were here, we spent 3 of them doing nothing.
Are you here next week, Stan? No. You don't get to deal with that one.